All right, hey everybody, can you hear me? We're gonna get started with the video in just a second. Just getting some audio and some video technical issues figured out. So let's see if that works. All right, so we should be live with audio and video now. Might take just a second. My connection is a little bit slow tonight, so let's see how. There we go. I think audio and video are both working. We're just going to do a couple tests here for a second. If you're in the chat, feel free to say hi, drop any questions as usual. Let's see, there we go. It looks like we are live. Fantastic. So, welcome to the chat, everyone, or the live stream. What I'm going to be doing today is a little more editing in Lightroom. And if we have the time, maybe by the end of this, possibly editing some of your photos. Hopefully this audio sounds a little bit better. I'm going to monitor this audio a little more closely in this stream. And again, if you listen to my other streams and you're listening to this stream please let me know if this audio sounds a little bit better and if it's coming through clear on your side. Hey Spyros, what's up? Welcome to the live stream. We're going to open up Lightroom in just a second here. I'm just getting some photos organized and imported. But yeah, hopefully my big thing for this is audio. The stream's kind of an audio test along with the editing and all that stuff. So let's jump into Lightroom and see what we got going on. All right, here we go. And I'm going to drag over my Lightroom window so I can see the chat as well. Usually this works pretty well. Spyro sounds good. Awesome. Good to hear. I know the video quality drops every now and then just because I have some connection issues here in my apartment and my internet is not all that great for uploading. It's fantastic for downloading, but my upload speeds kind of suck. So today what we're going to be doing is doing some editing in Lightroom. I have some of these neon portraits that I took in New York City on my last trip there in October. And I met up with an Instagrammer named Worldwide Blonde on Instagram. And she has a really awesome Spider-Gwen costume. And if you guys have seen my Neon Spidey shoot, we did kind of a similar shoot to that. She had contacted me recently, or not recently, soon after the Neon Spidey shoot and said, hey, let's do a Neon Spider-Gwen shoot. And I think that was a really awesome idea. So what we did is walked around New York City. It was a pretty fun shoot. The only problem, it was pouring rain. And so I'll go through some of my photos with you guys. I'll show you some of my edits, some of my top shots, some of the shots that messed up a little bit, and I'll show you kind of what I learned from the shoot and from the edit. And we'll pick a couple of these, maybe the top 1, 2, 3, and I'll take these kind of from beginning to end and talk about everything I did in Lightroom, and then we'll take it over into Photoshop and I'll finish it up a little bit. So what we're going to do here, I'll show you guys some of, this was an accidental double exposure, but we'll go through some of the images that I shot. So right down the street from my hotel, there was actually, there's a laundromat. And as you can see, there are some pillows in this window. Excuse me, but they had a really awesome red and blue neon cleaners sign. And the colors that came off of this sign were just fantastic. And this happened to be this image in particular. I'm going to hit Shift-Tab to make this image a little bit larger. Or I guess I can just hit F and full screen that. There we go, it just loaded. So I was actually waiting for the cars to pass by. So you can see on the back here, one of the cars passed by. We were right on the sidewalk on the street, and it was pouring rain in the background. We have our nice neon light up here, but a car passed by, so you can see in some of the raw imagery, I was kind of going for that nice look of the warm and the cool just for some contrast. But again, what kind of killed this shot for me was the fact that, again, it was a laundromat. Yep, sometimes Lightroom glitches out there. It just takes a second. With my laptop kind of being overloaded with the live stream and editing and all that good stuff, and my streaming software. So as you can see, her hair is kind of wet. It was pouring rain. But I absolutely love this neon sign. I walk by it all the time. I typically stay in the same area right around Times Square every time I go to New York. So when I stay there, I always pass by this sign on the way to the bar, and absolutely love it. I've never done a photo shoot there, and you can see it's a little bit high. It's probably about 6 feet off the ground, so it makes it difficult for using this for a photo shoot. But we did, and I think the colors looked absolutely awesome. This is one of my favorite images. Let's see, we can go to some of the basic settings, and you can see some of the minor edits that I've done to it. I did tint this a little bit towards the green and actually warmed it up a touch just because it is so freaking blue. There was just so much blue light coming off of that sign. And actually, I will go into my top shots. If you guys don't know how to use Lightroom collections, they're extremely helpful. I absolutely love using Lightroom collections, and honestly, it is a complete game changer for me compared to before. I wasn't sure what collections are, but I think they're a huge part of Lightroom and how to organize your photos. And more than anything, Lightroom, it's like Adobe Camera Raw with a whole file management system, and it manages your files in a way that doesn't take up more hard drive space as it would if you were to just manage them, let's say on your desktop, and have a bunch of file folders. And if you want to copy and paste different images and have an image in 2 folders, Lightroom has a way of doing that where it's not copying and pasting your imagery. It's essentially keeping essentially the metadata to the images and copy and paste metadata so that it's almost like a form of non-destructive editing. You're not copying and pasting files on your hard drive. You're just copying and pasting little bits of metadata. So you can have multiple edits of one photo, and technically on your hard drive, you only have one photo. You just have those multiple edits. So that, excuse me, having a lot of coffee. That's what makes Lightroom extremely powerful and why I love to use it. It's kind of like Adobe Camera Raw and Bridge all in one, but it's way better than Bridge if you've ever used Bridge. So it is cold here tonight in Colorado. I'm going to be drinking a lot of coffee. We have a huge snowstorm blowing in, so if my internet or anything goes down, it's probably the snowstorm or ice or something like that. So let's see what we got here. Again, we're going to go over to collections. If you have any questions about Lightroom collections, or we can just start from ground zero with collections for those who don't know. We can do an import, create collections sets, tag our imagery. I can go through a whole Lightroom import if you're interested in that. And that's actually what I might do shortly. I'll go through, I'll do some touches, retouching on a couple of these images and some minor edits that I kind of want to update, and then we will move on to something else after that. But again, don't mind me and my coffee. And throughout the entire thing, again, feel free to ask me questions at any point in time. I'm here for you guys, so again, we can always change the topic or go to a new question. That is completely up to you, and I'm kind of free for the next 2 hours, so we're just going to go through and edit. Come on, Lightroom, you're killing me. There we go. All right, collections is starting to get an attitude. There we go. So we'll go, here are my top, I guess, 11 images from this shoot that I really liked. I haven't gone through all of them yet. I think maybe we'll go to the end and we'll take a couple of these and just start kind of from ground zero and work our way up. But I'll just kind of spin through some of these shots. Feel free, let me know what you think. Oh man, Tyler made it. Welcome to the stream, man. So here are a couple more images. As you can see, you can probably see in the background here, the streets are soaking wet. It was pouring rain. There's, I guess Lightroom's going to freeze up on us a little bit. You can actually see the rain just kind of pouring down here off of these awnings. You can see it in the background here, just in that bokeh, pouring in the background. We got soaked. My shoes got soaked. It was not, well, it was a fun time, but not the best weather for a photo shoot. So here is an issue I ran into. You can see that over on the right hand side here in my histogram, you can see my camera settings. I shot this at ISO 100, 35mm, f2.5, I believe. Yep, I was shooting on a 35 1.4, shot at f2.5, and a 3/20th of a second. Now, the problem when you're shooting neon lights, you can start to see there's some streaking going on here. And let's see if I can get the correct zoom. You can kind of see dark spots in the neon, light spots, dark spots, kind of like fluorescent light. You can see these dark and light kind of patterns going over. Now, if I go to this next image, you can see I shot it at half of that shutter speed, 1/60th of a second, and I no longer have those streaks going on. You can actually kind of outshoot the neon refresh rate. Neon signs are old for the most part, usually, and even the newer ones have a very slow refresh rate. So you'll notice if you're shooting neon signs and you crank up your shutter speed way too high, you'll see that you get these nasty looking kind of like jail bars or refresh artifacts going through your image, and you don't want that. And I didn't learn that until my third or fourth neon shoot. I really wasn't sure what was going on, and then I just kind of messed with my settings, and turned out it was the refresh rate of the neon sign competing with my shutter speed. So that is always something to look out for. You'll see it extremely easily if you pop up your live view on your camera while you're shooting. You'll see those bars kind of just slowly creep across your screen. And again, they're not pretty. You have to shoot at lower shutter speeds, but of course, if you're shooting at night, lower shutter speeds are fantastic anyway for these neon lights. So we'll take a look at a couple other images. You can see here I use my prism. Absolutely love using my prism when I'm doing these neon shoots, especially if there's a bunch of people walking in the background. That gets really obnoxious. You don't want a bunch of people in your shoot. I really just want to focus on the model and the neon light. So take a look at a couple more of these. I went a little more purple with the white balance in this one. And then for this next one, I went for a little more of a close up. Again, you can see shutter speed 1/100th of a second. And this one, I actually might bring up some of the face. It got a little bit dark, so I'm going to do a little radial filter on the face. Click and drag. And as you can see, Lightroom is chugging a little bit, but that's pretty awesome. That radial filter really fits the face almost perfect. And I always, usually when I start, almost always, I turn up my exposure a bunch. I'm not necessarily going to leave it there, but I always like to make sure my radial filter is either inverted or not. If you don't click invert, your radial filter will affect everything on the outside of the circle, and then I have to click invert so that the filter will affect everything on the inside. And just cranking up my exposure real quick gives me a good idea of which side of the circle that the filter is affecting. So go back up to my radial filter settings, and I do have the option. Well, first of all, I'm going to start out by feathering this 100%. So there's a nice soft edge, a nice soft fall off. That looks great. I may have feathered that a bit too much for the size of the filter. I'll bring it down a touch. I apologize, Lightroom is going to chug a little bit. This live stream is taking up a little bit of power. There we go. And we can also add color. You can see the box is X'd out right now. But if I wanted to add some color to this, maybe it's a little bit blue and I wanted to add some orange. We'll see how that looks. See, I immediately added some warmth and some skin tones down there. Maybe we'll crank up the saturation a touch. Yeah, I kind of like that. That's not a tool I use very often. I rarely use that color, but sometimes it does come in handy. Now, scrolling back up, I actually don't mind the exposure where it's at. I think I'm going to put it to 1.5. That looks a little bit better. And now I'm going to, I don't want to mess with the shadows, but I am going to bring up the whites a hint. That looks good. Maybe I'll bring up the shadows ever so slightly. Yeah, that's a bit much. I like the shadows where they're at. I like the contrast. I don't want to add any more contrast. Now, when it comes to retouching, this texture tool right here is awesome to use. I'm going to zoom in real quick. And when my radial filter is selected, I just hit Z to zoom. And I'm going to move that around a little bit. Then I'm going to hold spacebar and drag across here. And what I want to do is turn down my texture. And you can see the face gets nice and soft, but it maintains all of the pores in the face. So that's a great little tip or trick to retouching your images. And then I will turn up my sharpness. Yeah, it's a great way to get smooth skin tones. You turn up your sharpness a bit, but using that, using the texture tool, turning it down gets nice smooth skin tones without taking away from your sharpness. You can see if I would do negative clarity, it would absolutely, so you can see, just destroy the sharpness of the image and get rid of a lot of contrast. I don't want to do that. But that looks pretty good. Let's turn this on and off, and we'll see kind of the before and the after. So there is, without the mask, huge difference. And with my mask, I think that looks awesome. So again, we can take a look at our mask overlay. You can see I have a nice feathered edge, and the red is what the mask is affecting. I think that looks pretty good. I might make it a touch bigger so it affects a little bit more of the neck, a little bit more of the hair, and I'm going to hit OK. Cool. And I'm going to hit backslash. I'll show you guys what it looked like before. There we go. So there's our before image. And again, we can see, hit backslash again, and we will see our edited image here in Lightroom. Again, I have not brought this into Photoshop. I haven't done anything crazy with it. This is just our pure Lightroom edit. You can see some of my settings here. I'll scroll through them. Nothing to hide here. I just turned down my highlights quite a bit. Turned up my whites again so we could get those nice white values in here. Nice, essentially clipping white values in these reflections here. I think that looks great. But then we always, again, have to make up for those bright areas and make sure we lighten up the face there. So those are my settings. Again, I shot this on a flat profile. Sometimes I like to come in here and play with some of Adobe's color profiles. You'll see sometimes they add some contrast and some other colors. Sometimes you'll see something you want. Sometimes none of them end up working for your image, and I just end up sticking with whatever my original color profile was. I usually have a pretty good time with portrait, but it looks like a lot of these are really warming up my image a little bit too much, and I'm not a huge fan. I'll try Adobe Vivid. Yeah, I'm not a fan of these. They're making my images look, or my image look super green. Just not a fan here. So we will undo all of those and go back to camera flat. And camera flat is just using my original color profile. Again, I shot these on the Nikon Z6 with my prism, and I think that looks pretty good. I'm just going to do a quick check here on the status of the stream. Everything looks good. Hopefully everything looks good still on your end. Hopefully you guys can hear me. Hopefully the mic quality is good. Paying a little bit more attention to that this time. And all right, we will get back into Lightroom. Let's see. I am going to just check a couple messages here real quick. Gonna make a couple posts on Twitter and Reddit just saying that our live stream has begun, just in case anybody else wants to join. Again, feel free to ask me any questions in the live chat. These are kind of just like if you've ever seen a Reddit AMA, ask me anything. Feel free to ask me anything, and we will go from there. But until you guys have any questions, I'm just going to kind of keep going on in Lightroom, making some minor tweaks to these images. I find this fun. Hopefully you guys find this entertaining. Here, I absolutely love this image. We'll do another full screen, make it a little bit larger. But I love these out of focus neons in the light. Look at the way the color transitions from this blue to the kind of pinkish purple in here, and then this neon sign back here is actually white, but it looks kind of yellow, just because of the contrast of the blue and the white. And I warmed it up quite a bit, and these blue neon signs were just so darn strong that warming this image up just made my whites kind of yellow. But that is okay with me. It gives the neon some contrast, and also this bokeh in the background gives some contrast. I think that's pretty awesome. So you can see the image is nice and sharp. Again, always when you're shooting portraits, always go for the eye. If I would have missed focus on the eye, the image would just be completely out of focus. Even if I would have got the tip of the nose, it doesn't matter, where your focus is other than the eye, it's going to be out of focus. So always make sure you're focused on the eye, and then furthermore, on top of that, make sure you're focused on the eye that is lit up. Let's say this eye were dark and the light were on the other side of the face. I would want to focus on that eye instead. Because if you can't see the eye, then it doesn't really matter if it's in focus or not. But there you can see that is tack sharp. Nice high resolution image coming out of the Nikon Z6. And you can see I turned down my highlights all the way, and it is still pretty darn bright. I turned up my whites a lot. I'm actually probably going to turn down my white values here. I want to save some of this detail here and here. Maybe I'll turn down my overall exposure to like 1.3. That looks pretty good. And then we're going to do the same thing we did in the last image. I want to try this mask again. It just works so well using this radial mask. It works so well in the last image. I think I might try this for a couple more of these, at least on the face. So we see our mask overlay there in red, everything that's being affected by the mask. We're going to turn up our exposure a stop. That looks a little bit much. Let's try a half stop. That looks great. Again, we can go down to this toggle switch right here and see the before and the after. That makes a huge difference, and that kind of, I don't want to say flattens out our image, but it makes the face, the values on the face, the white values match these values over here, and it really brings, again, a lot more attention to the face. And we'll add a little bit of color as well. Let's add some warm kind of orange tones. I like that. That adds even more emphasis on the face. We'll X that out. We'll add a touch of sharpness. I think the saturation is probably good. And we're going to turn down the texture a touch. I think that looks pretty darn good. Let's see. I'm going to turn down the highlights a touch. There we go. there was just these highlights over here were getting a little bit warm for my taste. I don't want to see any highlights on the face clipping. I'm okay, honestly, if that clips. I actually might use a gradiated filter on that side over here in a second, but I'm also going to warm up the face a touch. Move it towards the purple as well, magenta. Jared Neville, welcome to the chat, man. Glad to see you here. Hope all is well with you guys. Again, glad to have you here too, Tyler. Spyros, welcome. There we go. I think that looks pretty good. And we can go to the before by hitting backslash. Very boring image. You have to capture it nice and flat, so you're making sure you get those nice skin tones, making sure your skin tones aren't clipping. It's really difficult to shoot properly exposed skin tones and to shoot, non-clipping neon lights. But that was our before, and that is our after image. So that is kind of my top 10 or 12, 11 images. So far, we can go through some of my other images from the shoot if you guys are interested. Nobody has seen these images yet, except for me and the model. I've been super busy since October, so I have not been able to edit a lot of these yet. So you guys are the first ones to see these, so I am absolutely open for any critiques that you have. So again, feel free. Let me know in the chat what you think. If you see that maybe I'm making a mistake or something, or you catch something that I don't, or you want to see some sort of edit that I haven't done, just let me know and we'll play around and see what we get. We also went down, just to kind of dry out, we went down into the subway for a little bit, did some shots down there. I haven't seen any sort of cosplay shoots down in the subway. This was, I think, the Lexington Ave entrance down here, and I just wanted to play with some interesting composition. So I thought this looked pretty cool. And again, I apologize if my phone is blowing up during this. Yeah, I thought this composition was interesting. We have all these leading lines towards the face, and then you can see, if you're familiar with a subway, even if you're not, you can probably tell, big sign that says exit, and you have a stairwell off into the street. And you can see the stairs were soaking wet. The water was just pouring down there. And this was, I think, my second night in the city. My first night of actually being able to shoot. And my shoes got absolutely soaked because of the rain. And I stepped in a couple big puddles, and that was not fun. Jeez. But I had a blast in New York. I know I talk about Photo Expo a lot, but I absolutely love Photo Expo. I think it's a blast. And I will be at Photo Expo again next year. Hopefully we can get Tyler out to 2020 Photo Expo so he and I can go shoot in New York City again. All right, we'll let this image load. Again, you can see the bokeh in the background. We had a very large reddish pinkish neon sign over here, and we were kind of standing, well, we were going back and forth between standing in the rain, and I had an umbrella that was absolutely getting destroyed by the wind. It was inside out and getting bent back and forth, and I ended up just throwing it away because it's a piece of garbage that I bought at like CVS or Walgreens down by Central Station. But you can see here in my white balance, look at the original image. So there is my raw unedited. Hit backslash, you can see I added a bunch of contrast. I'm not a huge fan of the white balance. I'm going to play around with the white balance in this image. We'll see what we get. This is one of those shots. It's difficult to white balance because we have so many different kinds of color balances and white balances going on and different temperatures of light. We have this hot pink neon sign over here. We have these headlights over here. We have blue lights. I think this sign up here might be white, but it's so out of focus, it's kind of blending with the red. So I'm scared to white balance from that. But I actually kind of like this super strong reddish look. But, oh, you know what's happening? It's because I'm using that Adobe Portrait color profile. I don't want to use that. I would like to go back to my original. Let's see what Adobe Neutral looks like. Sometimes it's fun just to play with these. See, this looks like it was, the white balance here looks like this is like some green fluorescent light that was shot on film, and I'm not a huge fan of that. It just looks a little bit gross. Yeah, Jared, I will let you know. It's going to be sometime in October. Yeah, we are definitely doing Pennyboard Adventures 2.0. Oh, when that happens, that's going to be fun. I still look back at, because the Pennyboard episode, riding pennyboards through New York City, if you guys haven't seen that episode, it's kind of funny, from Photo Plus Expo. Welcome, Cloudy Night. Good to see you. You're from Twitter. Love your neon images, man. So you're in the right place. We're editing some neon photos, neon portraits right now. Here we go. I'm going to find one of these flat profiles, neutral, monochrome now. Where is the dang flat profile? Oh man, you're killing me, Lightroom. Lightroom, if you don't know, recently moved around all of its profile garbage, so it's kind of driving me nuts. I'm getting used to this again. I really have to go through here and I have to reorganize all these color profiles because I use ones occasionally, but I really like sticking to the most flat looking one available. Neutral isn't flat enough for me. I usually like going for very flat. I think it's called like flat version 2, and yeah, camera flat version 2. I believe that is it. Let's try that out. That's better. Yeah, we'll go in. We'll play with the white balance a little bit. Some of these color profiles are just, some garbage presets. Don't care about any of these. Okay, so moving on. Yeah, good to have all you guys here. If you haven't, let's see, at work right now, so I won't be able to, that is fine. Yeah, just feel free to watch. Feel free to ask any questions. I will answer to the best of my ability, or I will make an answer up because I like doing that too. So I'm going to close this color profile. I selected flat. I usually like starting out with flat, doing whatever kind of editing I want to do, and then moving on from there. So again, we can see there's a lot of green shades in this. I don't know where the green's coming from right now, from where I white balanced earlier, but I'm going to re-white balance from this shoulder here. That looks much, much better. I think I might even get a better read if I do on this plastic bag of this lady walking back here. That's still really green, so I'm just going to do this manually. Bring in some of those magenta values, wait for that to load. But yeah, as that's loading, I talk about Photo Plus Expo all the time because it is just a ton of fun. I love going every year. I'm planning on going again in 2020, so whoever wants to meet up, I would be more than happy to meet up, and we can go shoot around the city, do a collaboration, whatever you want to do. Maybe I'll do like a workshop or something out there. I think that would be fun. All right, so I'm just gonna kind of go back and forth. You can see this light was extremely warm, so I have to add a lot of correction to kind of bring it back. And it's very saturated as well, so I'm going to bring down the saturation. I crank the vibrance. And if you guys don't know the difference between vibrance and saturation, saturation, if you turn it all the way up, it will absolutely just destroy your image. Saturation is kind of a, you could call it a dumb tool. if you bring up your saturation all the way, it will just clip all of your colors and your image will look like trash. So let's bring down saturation. Now on the other hand, if I bring up my vibrance to 100%, well, that is defeating the purpose of my example, but vibrance is actually a smart saturation, so to speak. Vibrance will only bring up the least saturated colors in your image. So I usually tend to bring down my saturation quite a bit and then bring up my vibrance. And that will help even out your color contrast a little bit and add a little bit more color contrast and add some value to some of these less saturated areas without clipping the most saturated areas. Yes, saturation is exactly, you are exactly right. Saturation is the devil, and welcome, Cameron. We have a good chunk of my military people in here, which is awesome. But yeah, I keep getting sidetracked, but I definitely want to head back to Photo Plus next year. Had a blast at Photo Plus this year in 2019. Had a blast in 2018. I have 2 videos on Photo Plus. I have a video from 2018 where we went skateboarding through the middle of New York streets. I would not recommend that at all. Absolutely horrible idea. But you can see what happened when we did that. We bought some little $20 penny boards and went skating through the city, and again, not a great idea. But let's see if we can go down to HSL and fix some of these crazy colors. So the saturation in this reddish pinkish purple is just crazy, so I'm gonna go to the saturation tab, hit my targeted selector tool, and I'm actually gonna zoom in first. And I'm going to select some of these pinks and purples, and I'm going to desaturate them for right now. You can see if I drag down, we desaturate. But as you can see, we're starting to get some weird skin tones right here, so I don't want to do that. I'm going to undo that guy right there, and I'm going to go back to white balance. One of the hardest things when you're shooting neon portraits, neon can be kind of crazy. When it comes to color balance, you can have so many wild colors with the neons that they don't necessarily match up with your white balances in your camera, and they don't necessarily match up with, the tungsten light in the streets or the sodium vapor light. So you just have some crazy crap going on when you shoot neon. So that's something to be aware of. If you get your background properly white balanced, your portrait or your subject might look a little bit crazy, and if you get your subject properly white balanced, your background might get a little bit crazy. So that's kind of what we're dealing with right here. I might actually move on to a different image. Here we go. I like this one a little bit better. You can see there's less stuff going on in the background. We're just dealing with some of this white bokeh, which is okay with me, and some of these hot pink neons right here. So again, I'm going to go back. Let's see if I can get a flatter color profile. This one is just very, very saturated and very contrasty. And yeah, President would be fun. I couldn't handle that one. Definitely could not handle that. Version 2. All right, again, I have to go through. I think I can select a little star on the side and favorite. Just put one stop, maybe half stop when I edit mine. Yeah, so what I like to do, can you use a gray card when shooting with neon? Well, you can use a gray card when shooting with neon. Oh, man. Theoretically, yes. Sorry, I'm trying to think in my head. You can, but if you get the color from the neon sign on your gray card to white balance, you're just going to eliminate the color from the actual neon sign, which is half the reason I shoot with the neon sign. So if you had a gray card far enough away from the sign that you were just picking up the ambient light from the street, then I think you could properly white balance. Here we go. Adobe Neutral, Adobe Portrait. Okay, flat version 2. This is the one I like to use. We're going to select this flat version 2. I'm going to hit the star. So hopefully hitting the star will allow me. I'm going to close this. Perfect. Now flat version 2 is right here in my options. But yeah, you would have to. Oh, I did crop this in quite a bit. Let's open this up a little bit so I can see some of the hand. That's better. Maybe even a little bit more of the background. What do you guys think about that? I like that right there. But yes, you could theoretically use a gray card. Let's say I put my gray card way back here behind the model. But then it becomes the interesting conundrum, I guess, of what light am I choosing to have. I have so many different light temperatures. I have this hot red, I have this blue, which is making this nice purple on the face. I love that. But I also have this warmish light back here. I have a green light back here. I have some more, green, blue, all sorts of, whatever colors. I kind of have to decide what the heck is going to be my white balance. I really don't know. And at that point, if I'm not white balancing off the gray card, which is bouncing neon light, then I'm white balancing off kind of some random light in the background that really doesn't have anything to do with my photo. So that's kind of where I run into issues, and I usually just kind of eyeball it when it comes to these neon portraits. You can see up on the side there's a touch of that blue neon, and it's more distracting. Yeah, I just wanted to crop that out. That looked kind of crappy, just having that sliver of white light. Not a fan. But you can see this nice blue and red neon in the eyes right here, refracted in this catch light. Looks great, reflected. And again, I didn't focus on this eye. This eye was kind of the subject of the portrait, and that's why I chose to have my focus over here on this eye. But yeah, when it comes to shooting neons, we'll take a look at here is my completely unedited, before raw image. Again, with the Nikon Z6. And here are my edits. But you can see when I shoot, I'm always going for my lowest possible ISO for a non-grainy image. I want as much detail on there as possible that is not grain. The Z6 does fantastic when it comes to low light. The sensor is fantastic. I think the Z6 actually uses a Sony sensor, and so does the Z7 if I'm not mistaken. But the low light quality is absolutely great. You can see there's like no noise back here shooting in the middle of the night, and that was awesome. I was shooting on my 35 1.4. I was shooting at 1.6, and again, 1/100th of a second. But I wanted to make sure, if possible, my neons are not overexposed so that I can always, bring back that detail and bring back that color in my portraits and not have my neons just completely blown out. And that gives me a little bit of room to bring up the brightness. This might be an image where I'm kind of deciding if I want to use one of those radial filters or not. I can give a scroll down here and you guys can see what my edits are so far. I might give that texture tool a try, but you can see her skin was just extremely soft, and I really don't have to do any retouching at all. That's what made this shoot so easy. Didn't have to go into Lightroom or, into Photoshop and do any sort of crazy frequency separation or anything like that. Texture, in a way, almost does something similar to frequency separation, but this looks great. It looks a little bit soft, only because, my sharpening is turned all the way down for some reason. Always sharpen digital images. That's something I've learned. They're never quite as sharp as you think they are, so I always do quite a bit of sharpening. Now you can see that eye is tack sharp. A little trick, if you haven't learned this from any of my other videos, you can hold down Alt, and now if I drag, there we go. Now if I drag my sharpness slider, you can see that it's much easier to see my sharpening values here. Again, same thing with radius. Radius at 2 I think looks like garbage, so I'm going to turn my radius way down to 1. And here now you can see kind of an inverted looking image, and you can see exactly what kind of radius my sharpening is doing. So if I crank it all the way up to a radius of 3, that sharpening is affecting more pixels, and it's working more like contrast than it is sharpening. So I'm going to turn my radius to 1. Now I'm going to take my detail slider. Again, I'm still holding Alt. And you can start to see as I turn it all the way up, I usually like to go to 100, and then I kind of creep back down from there. And 40-ish looks good. I'm going to let go of the key, let go of Alt. Again, you can see, holding Alt, that looks super tack sharp right now. We're going to go back to the original. Looks great, but again, raw images tend to fall kind of flat, both in sharpness and in color and contrast. So there is my edited image. I think this one looks pretty good so far. This is one of those shots that I have to keep coming back to. I think it's always a smart idea to edit an image and then go walk away. Go grab a cup of coffee, go take a nap, go watch an episode of The Office, do something, and then come back to your images later on, just with a fresh set of eyes, or have somebody else come back to your images and take a look at them, give some critiques. And hey, welcome Lou, welcome to the stream. Sweet Lou Photography is awesome, by the way, if you guys want to check out his channel. We recently did a collaboration, as well as hang out at Photo Plus, which I was just talking about a couple minutes ago before he swung in to the live chat. But yeah, make sure you check out Sweet Lou's photography page on YouTube. Absolutely awesome. I watch his videos all the time. Just type in live chat here. There we go. Yeah, we're lagging a little bit, but that's okay. We'll live. I am going to just answer a couple messages on my phone real quick, if you guys don't mind. It's going to take me about 2 seconds. I just got my phone blowing up and possibly snowboarding tomorrow, so I'm trying to collaborate and work that out. So if anybody is in the Colorado area and you are going to be anywhere near Breckenridge Mountain, hit me up. I will probably be out there tomorrow. Perfect. Let's see. I'm going to check Twitter real quick. Nah, no, I'm not worried about it. But yeah, again, Sweet Lou Photography is awesome. Really focuses heavily on film stuff, and I'm trying to get into film more this coming up year. I just shot a couple rolls of film on a new camera. I'm going to do a little vlog video about that pretty soon. But if you want to know about Polaroids, you want to know about, as he says, 120 millimeter film or 35 millimeter film, yeah, feel free to check out Lou's page. You will learn something, or you will be moderately to mildly entertained. Yeah. So let's see. Yeah, definitely subscribe to Sweet Lou's page. All about film all the time. He does a lot more than that though, but film and film photography and analog stuff is why I go to his page. So back in Lightroom, again, I'm going to hold down Alt again, and you can see holding down Alt when I'm playing with my noise reduction will do the same thing. It's lagging a little bit. Come on there. There we go. So this gives me a better idea of how noisy my image actually is, because color is extremely distracting for a lot of different purposes. And it just distracts your eye when you're trying to do both sharpening and noise reduction. So, holding Alt will turn your image black and white, and then as you slide this slider up and down, you get a lot better idea of what your noise reduction and what your sharpening is actually doing. So we can see right now my noise reduction is cranked, my image is going to look super soft. But if I let go of Alt, and I add the saturation back, it's extremely hard to tell what my noise reduction is doing just because of all the dang saturation, especially in neon light portraits. So that looks very soft. I definitely don't want my image that soft. For the very, very subtle noise that was there, I think 20 is great. Let's see. Cloudy, are you asking me what kind of camera I use, or are you talking to Lou? Because I know Lou shoots on a crap ton of different cameras. So I just picked up I was down in Texas last week, and I picked up a new little film camera that I found for $5 at a little Spanish thrift store down there. And the lady who ran the store did not speak any English. I learned that el camera is camera, and that's about all I learned in Spanish that day. But I found this little box that you can see I posted some pictures of it on Twitter and Instagram, and on my community tab on YouTube. It is just a plain white and gray box that literally just says 35 millimeter camera. So I'm going to be doing a little vlog about that camera. It's essentially, you'll see it when I do the vlog in a week or two, but it's interesting. I shot 2 rolls in Texas. I think I ruined one of the rolls by jacking up, just kind of like learning how to use the actual camera itself. But yeah, jacked up the first roll. I think the second roll went well, and I'm shooting a third roll right now around Colorado. So when that third roll is done, I'm going to develop all 3 rolls, see what happens, and then that's when the actual vlog is going to go up. But yeah, man, I would love to do a snowboard vlog at Breckenridge, but I'm kind of scared. I don't have a GoPro yet, which is very sad. I'd end up having to take out like my GH5 and trying to snowboard with that, and that would be a mess. But yeah, man, that is the mystery camera that I was talking about, and I will do a whole episode on it. With shooting with it, I've been filming some B-roll, kind of shooting with the actual camera itself. I will document the entire development process and kind of how it turns out, and then doing a very interesting video about the camera itself. It is a very interesting camera, and if you've seen the box, how plain the box is, that is kind of a little bit of a teaser for what the camera itself looks like. It is interesting. So let's get back into Lightroom. And if you guys remember how I was talking about trying to do your sharpening and trying to do your contrast your sharpening and your noise reduction with all of this color, it gets distracting. So I found, have you ever wondered kind of how much contrast that like an image needs? Like, is this a good amount of contrast? Is this a good amount of contrast? Is, plus 50 a good amount of contrast? Is, plus 100? I mean, that's super contrasty and nothing's really quite clipping yet. Like, what is a good amount of contrast? So I will double click this, and again, double clicking this little tab right here will set your slider back to 0. Now here's a little trick that I like to use. I call it my Lightroom hack. One of the few Lightroom hacks that I actually came up with all by myself. I hit the letter V, which will make my image black and white. You can see we just went to black and white. And when we are in black and white, just like sharpening and just like noise reduction, it makes it so much easier to see how much contrast is in your image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slowly add contrast, And that looks pretty good. My whites look pretty good. I can see that over here, my neon sign looks like it's clipping a touch. I'm going to turn on this little tab. This little arrow right here will actually give me a little graphical representation. See, it turns the areas that are clipping red. And then same thing if I hit this little arrow right here, or highlight over it works as well. Highlighting over that, you can see red is clipping highlights, and highlighting over this triangle is the blue over here is the clipping shadows. That means completely black, no data that I can bring back there. And that is clipped. So I want to add contrast, kind of. I don't want those clipping areas to get too large. And then I can always bring back a touch of the highlights. But I love working on my contrast in black and white. That's something I do in almost all of my images. And I feel like I'm getting more accurate contrast. And then I can just hit the letter V again on the keyboard. Excuse me, let that load. And I think that contrast looks great. So there is our before, there's our after. I think that looks pretty good. This is, again, as I said, one of those images I will come back to in a little bit, make some edits too, just kind of see what I think about it tomorrow. I might not finish this particular one tonight, but let's move on to a different image. We've spent quite a bit of time on this one. So let's see what is happening in the live chat. But yeah, every time I go on vacation, every time I travel somewhere, I travel a lot. The Air Force has me flying all around the country, and soon to be Space Force. I'm just throwing that out there. I'll tell you guys a little bit about that in a little bit. I have some big news about myself and Space Force. So I think I'm allowed to drop that news. So I'll let you guys know about that in a minute. But yeah, so the Air Force has me flying state to state. I'm in California, Florida, Colorado. Oh man, Texas, New York, all over the country. You can see if you follow me on Instagram, I am everywhere. But yes, I check out the thrift stores. Usually if I'm staying in a slightly larger town, I will try my best to check out all of the thrift stores, because every town has at least like 5 or 6 thrift stores usually if it's a large town. And hit them up, see what kind of cameras they got. I almost bought 2 when I was in Texas. Almost bought a little Polaroid camera as well, but it was broke, so didn't bother. But yeah, the little film camera I bought was interesting. But yeah, thrift stores are the best place in the world to go if you want to find awesome steals on a camera. I think Tyler is still mad at me because I found that 100-year-old, a century-year-old film camera, a fold-up Kodak Junior #1 from, I believe, 1919, 120 film. That sucker is 100 years old. The shutter still works. I can't believe that. Like, nowadays, if I would pick up, an old Canon Rebel or something like that, the shutter's probably going to die in 10 to 15 years. But this damn camera is 100 years old. Shutter still works. Everything still works. There's a very, very tiny light leak in the bellows when you stretch out the camera itself, and you have that kind of zigzagged accordion pattern that comes out of the camera. There's a very tiny light leak, and I have to figure out how to fix that. I'm probably going to ask Lou. He may have dealt with that before, how to actually fix a light leak in bellows. I'm just afraid I don't want to damage this camera anymore. It's in a little bit of rough shape, but again, for 100 years old, it looks pretty darn good, and I know I won't look that good when I'm 100 years old. But yeah, so just got a text message from Tyler. Yeah, okay. Yep, Tyler just checked out, had to go, but Tyler is in the military as well. So Tyler, like I said, talk about him behind his back real quick. Tyler's in the Marines. He and I shoot together all the time. He went to Syracuse University with me for a year when the Air Force selected me to go to Syracuse for a year so I could learn a whole bunch of things at Syracuse and then teach them to a lot of people. I'm actually going to drop this Lightroom window again real quick, and I'm going to full screen my face, or at least make it a little bit bigger. Hit that button. There we go. Go back to Lightroom. But yeah, just since I'm talking here for a minute, if you don't know, I didn't talk about it a ton, but the Air Force paid for me to go to Syracuse University for a year, get a chunk of credits there. I took 15 credits a semester, 30 credits total for the year, graduated with a nice little diploma from Newhouse's School of Journalism. Got a little photo, video, graphics, radio type of thing from there, but I learned so much when I was there. I got to meet up with photographers. My teacher was Gregory Heisler. If you guys want to do any sort of research, if you're getting into portrait photography, look up Gregory Heisler. Look up his portfolio. It is absolutely awesome. This guy is ridiculous with light, and come on, man, you're gonna edit right in the middle of my my little editing podcast I got going on here. No sticky stuff and replace it. Yeah, so that is what I'm worried about. It's the light leak itself is in the bellows, and they're made out of a weird, like, I don't know what kind of coating, because it's like bellows are made out of like almost like it's not cardboard and it's not fabric. It might be fabric covered cardboard, but it's made to bend, and just bellows scare me because the more you bend them, the more they get worn, and eventually a hole is going to pop up in your bellows. I don't want to replace them. I was just wondering if I could, maybe dab it with some like black paint or a very, very tiny amount of like black epoxy or something like that. I'm thinking I'm scared because I want to repair these things, but I don't want to make it worse, and I don't want to, fold it together. It all sticks. Something sticks together, rips apart. The whole thing's crap. But I also don't want to ruin an entire roll of 120 film. Trust me, gaffer's tape was the first thing I thought about, and that's how I knew I was wrong. Yes, so I haven't put a roll of film through it, but what I did was, there's a little hole in the back where I can take a stylus and actually etch into the back of the piece of film. I took out the little red filter. I lost that, by the way, so I'm gonna have to, 3D print a new one or figure out a way to replace that. It's not that critical, but I opened up the shutter. There's I believe like a 50th of a second, a 100th of a second, a bulb mode, and a timer mode. So the time mode will like open the shutter until you click the button again, then close it, and then bulb mode, the shutter's open as long as you hold a little shutter switch. But I held it up in, I think, bulb mode, and then I put my eye to the back and I held it up to a bright window, and I could see one or two little tiny, tiny dots. And they weren't a huge deal, but I know some of the tiniest little specks can really screw up, obviously, an unexposed piece of film and just completely gray or haze the whole thing out. And at least if I know it's there, I'd like to fix it, fix the ones that I know are there. So I'm going out, and then, if I come back and I found out there was another light leak, at least I, made the effort to first fix the first, hole or two. Get my daily dose of 8 p.m. coffee. Oh man, I'm gonna be up all night. So yeah, what do you guys want to talk about? Just gotta text Tyler back here. Is Cameron still here, or did Cameron bail out? Maybe he bailed out. Well, he is gonna miss my awesome announcement that I got coming up. How many people we got? 4 people in the. How many people we got in the live chat right now? It's you and me, Lou. We're it. We are it. I am gonna put up. I'm gonna spam Reddit a little bit. I love spamming Reddit. I'm going to spam Reddit with some things and saying, yeah, dude, edit some photos. We're gonna love to see what you're working on. Let me know when your next video comes out. And we still have to do our Polaroid collaboration video. I want to get, everybody hyped up. Everybody that's watching gets hyped up about this video that may or may not ever happen, but it's gonna happen. So we got to do that pretty soon. But yeah, have a good night. I'm gonna check the Reddits real quick. Just see if we can, get some attention to the live stream, because, like I said, I love spamming people with my crap. There we go. We got a couple upvotes. Gotta love those upvotes. I apologize. I kind of got the sniffles. I'm trying to fight off a cold before it really swings through. I don't want to get a cold. And I know if I go snowboarding tomorrow, I'm definitely going to get one. It's usually the one thing that kind of pushes me over the edge. Yeah, I know. Jared, you've been here the whole time. Yeah, feel free to add anything. Jared might be the only one left, because I know Lou's got to go. I'm scared to hit this little pop-out chat thing. I feel like I'm going to break YouTube. All right, back to Lightroom. We'll get into that in a minute. And again, pretty soon, I was hoping there would be some more people that I could talk about my Space Force news with, but Jared, you might be the only one. I did a community post. I am so bad. I am terrible at advertising my YouTube videos. I will admit that. I get a lot of people that are, they're like, hey, you have a great channel. These are probably spam. I get a lot of people that say, hey, you have an awesome YouTube channel. You deserve more subscribers. And cool, I think so too. I don't know how to advertise my stuff though. So if you guys want to share any of my content, really appreciate that. If you have any friends that are photographers, you can say, hey, check out this jackass. He knows what he's doing. But yeah, Jared, really appreciate you hanging out. I think to this date, one of my favorite videos of yours is the Lego camera slider video. Like, nothing beats that. It ultimately, like, I know you do a lot of Lego stuff on your channel, which is why I love it. But that brought together like 2 of my biggest loves in life. Like, I grew up on Legos, and if I wasn't a photographer right now, I would be, yeah. If I was not a photographer, I would be doing some other sort of design, architecture, stuff like that. I took a little bit of architecture, AutoCAD, all that fun stuff in high school. Absolutely loved it, and that's kind of where my life was headed. And a little background on me: I started loving video when I was middle school-ish. But as you know, most vloggers know, it is hard to make a short film by yourself. It sucks. It's hard to hold the camera. It's hard to hold a boom mic. It's hard to be the actor, all this other stuff, and make a short film by yourself. So I started to get into 3D animation, 3D modeling. Took some classes in that. My parents told me there was really no career in that, so I kind of shifted towards like AutoCAD, and like house design, building design, engineering, architecture, all that fun stuff that I didn't really want to do. But it was something. It made my parents happy, and my parents were the one providing a roof over my head at the time, so that's kind of what you got to do sometimes. So got into all that 3D stuff, and then eventually I started getting into back into video when I started, making friends that wanted to do video stuff with me. Got back into photography again, and when I got back into video and photography, that was probably 2009-ish, and I just decided, hey, I'm going to pick this, I'm going to go hard with it, and that's what I'm going to do. So ended up going real hard with photography, and then that dropped off for a little bit, went back to 3D animation for a bit because it was hard finding models when I was in college, because I worked for Northern Michigan University for a little bit as one of their staff photographers, shooting events, I really like doing the plays, performances at the theater. Absolutely a blast to shoot. Doing a live event. If you've never done it before, again, absolute blast. They're all, decked out in costumes. They have professional people lighting it, so it's essentially like models acting in front of you in all sorts of different costumes. Absolutely a blast. But I will, I'm going to take a breath for a little bit because I've been rambling on. I'm going to take a sip of coffee, and then we are going to dive right back into Lightroom. How long has this stream been going? An hour and 11 minutes. That is awesome. My last stream was 2 hours. So my plan was kind of, an hour. I usually ramble on quite a bit. Usually the second hour I do a lot more editing, and we really dive into like a specific question. So if there's anybody watching the stream right now that has any questions, again, feel free. I don't care, if you're a pro, if you're a beginner, if you've never touched a camera before and you've just looked at one out of the corner of your eye, feel free to drop any questions. I don't mind. Drop any critiques to my images that you want to. I have extremely thick skin. I might cry a little bit, but I will get over it. So, drop any of your opinions. I'm gonna find one of these images that I like, and again, like I said, we're gonna start from ground zero and work our way up to a final image. Here's one that I liked quite a bit. Let's find one with the mask. Here we go. So I want to find an image with, there we go, the Spider-Gwen mask. And some of these neons, I think, with the prism. I think that looks awesome. I'm going to look for a slightly different pose, though. Let's see. There we go. I like that one. That looks pretty cool. But we will skim through some of my edits. I took 255 photos on this shoot. Again, I am completely happy if 10% of my photos turn out right, because the better you get, hopefully, the more, good-looking images you're coming back with. But at a certain point, you just have to experiment. When you feel like I'm not saying I'm the best, but when you feel like you've kind of maxed out, like you're hitting up against a wall, like I don't know what to do to get better, if you're in a creative rut or you're stuck, you have to push yourself, you have to experiment, you have to try things that you haven't tried before, because that's the only way you're going to get somewhere else. Otherwise, you're going to keep going down the same road in a straight direction unless you veer off course and try something new. So that's how you're going to, push yourself out of a creative rut, or at least that's how I do it. But again, a lot of these shoots, especially with neon, they're all me just experimenting, seeing what works, what doesn't work. And that is how I learn, and that's how I recommend learning. That's my little rant about learning. But yeah, Jared, that video with the slider was awesome. I would love to see a video with a gimbal. That the idea of that alone just blows my mind. I want to make sure my face is completely, come on guys, my face is completely covering up the photo. That is no fun. I would rather see Spider-Gwen than my ugly mug. So let's make that my ugly face a little bit smaller. Chad Wilder, welcome to the chat, man. Do I shoot any film? Yes, I do. We're actually just talking about that a little bit a couple minutes ago. So I shoot on a very, my first, I'll call it real film camera. I don't want to When I was younger, I shot Polaroids, I shot a lot of disposables when I was much younger. I started off on a Sears Ryko camera with I believe it had a 50 mil. It had a wide lens, like a 35 or a 24, and then it also came with a 135. I started off with that when I was younger, shot a lot of film, didn't develop it myself. I went to like Walgreens and stuff, and I'm talking about I was like 8, 9, 10 years old. Got pretty heavy into digital, and now I'm kind of going back. Right now I have a Canon AE1. I have that Ryko camera. I have a Kodak #1 Junior, and I'm looking at getting possibly like an old beat up, like Pentax, like K1000. I would love to get one of those and just, leave it in my car, pay like $20 for something like that. I don't want to do that with my Canon because I don't want it to get stolen. I got super lucky when I was in Syracuse. I was looking on the Facebook Marketplace, and I was up in Syracuse, and there was a guy at Cornell that was selling an old Canon AE1P or program for $50. They had shot one roll of film on it, and I believe like 1987 or 1986. Put it back in the bag, and never shot with it ever again. So for $50, I got the Canon AE1P, completely mint condition, perfect, like not a piece of dust, not a scratch on this thing. They had only put one roll of film through it. It came with a 35 mil, or excuse me, yeah, a 35 mil, I believe, a 50, and a 135. All of the original camera strap, original lens covers, lens caps, back caps, all those things. And I got a steal on this thing. The guy was basically selling it for like cigarette money, so I didn't care. But for being a camera that's like 25 years old, or excuse me, like 35 years old, I got a steal on it, and I wouldn't want anything to happen in my car. So like I said, I'm looking at like an older, maybe a Minolta, maybe a Pentax like K1000, just to leave in my car. And if it, it could get beat up, bump around a little bit, and I wouldn't be too disappointed because I'd only spend like $20 on it. But what was I saying? Yeah, just something that, if my car happened to get broken into and it got stolen, I wouldn't be, super butthurt about it. But that was a long 10-minute answer to your question. Sorry, Chad. But yes, I do shoot film occasionally. I'm actually I haven't developed film for a long time, since like 2014. It's been 5 or 6 years since college that I actually did dark room processing and some alternative processing. But yes, I do a little bit of film. In 2020, I'm really going to get into it. I would highly recommend. You can see in the chat above you, Sweet Lou Photography. If you want a guy that does a lot of fun little experiments with film, and if you're really into film, definitely check out his channel. Subscribe to Sweet Lou because his stuff is awesome. He does a lot of crazy things like developing film with beer. He has these things called film crapshoots, and they're fun little episodes about just experimenting with different things you can do with film and all sorts of stuff like that. But again, long story short, I do shoot with film occasionally. If you have any specific questions, you might know way more than I do. But I shoot, for the most part, for work. I shoot digital for most of my work, and film is kind of just like a little hobby thing on the side. But I would love to get into it more, and my goal is to shoot a lot more film in 2020 and do a lot more little like film blogs, film experiments, film videos, stuff like that, behind the scenes of shooting film. But hopefully that kind of answered your question. I'm going to roll back into Lightroom over here and try and find a good photo that we can, start to finish edit. And I'm just trying to find This one's really close. I wish you can see my prism right here in the lower left, kind of going from the lower right to the upper left actually. You see that prism, but the prism is not necessarily reflecting what I want it to. But yeah, for sure, definitely check out Sweet Lou. Give him a subscribe. He has like 4,000 followers now, I believe. Puts out a video, I think, just about weekly, and has some awesome stuff on top of his comedic style. You will see pretty quick of videos. Are extremely entertaining. Again, my phone is blowing up. I apologize. Got to answer that every now and then. Okay, so I am getting closer to an image that I like over here. I'm working backwards, so I should probably actually work forwards. Whatever. Yeah, I'm trying to find an image that looks kind of the way I want it to. That phrase did not make sense at all. This is my photography. My images should look the way I want them to. Ooh, I really like that one. You can almost see it looks like it's an open sign. O-P-E. I guess there's probably be an N right there. That looks pretty sick. I'm getting close. I think it's going to be in the next image or two. And I want like a bright blue streak. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. Let's check out a couple more of these. I'm getting close to where I started. I don't know what you guys think. You can tell what the model is doing, but I might have cropped in camera a little too tight on this side. See, I like the hands right there. Now, I'm going to zoom in 100%. I think I missed focus on this one, if I'm not mistaken. That's super soft at 100%. Unless it's just loading right now. Let's see. Come on. Yep, I screwed up. I missed focus completely on that one. So let's play the game of find the image that's in focus. This, again, to describe this shoot to people that are new to the stream, I don't know who all we have in the stream. I'm hoping that Sweet Lou is just listening to my sweet, sultry voice like a podcast while he edits, because it says he's still in the live chat. But what we're going to do is we're going to go through and basically find the image that I actually got in focus. But for those of you that are newer to the stream right now, I might have to put my glasses on. I'm kind of struggling to see what's in focus and what isn't. There we go. Yes. All right, so it looks like this one is in focus, but I was describing the shoot a little bit earlier. It was downtown New York City, absolutely pouring rain. We are right near Koreatown. I think it was Koreatown. Just trying to find some sort of neon sign. So I'm going to start working on this image while I talk about the shoot. Let's see. 5x7. 4x5 looks pretty good. But yeah, this for this shoot, it was just absolutely pouring rain. It was terrible. I had a blast. But the rain made the shoot very difficult and very challenging. It was a very fun shoot. Had an awesome time with this model shooting, but the rain was a struggle. It was blowing rain, pouring. My umbrella had flipped inside out. I wasn't able to shoot any sort of like behind the scenes or B-roll of this shoot at all. Gonna white balance here and just see what happens. This may explode. It might explode. Yeah, that's a little too cool. I think I'm gonna warm it up a touch. Yeah, white balance, as I said before in the video, white balance is kind of a pain in the butt when it comes to playing around with neon signs. You can't really bring a gray card out there because it won't be accurate, and you can't really, white balance off of, anything white on your model if the neon sign is in the way. So it becomes kind of this game of guessing, what my white balance is, which can be fun. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the letter V on the keyboard in Lightroom. That's going to change my image to monochrome or black and white. And this is where, again, if you were here earlier in the video, this is like a little Lightroom hack that I like to use to edit my contrast. It's a lot easier to see when my eyeballs aren't distracted by the color. I'm going to bring in a touch of shadow detail. I never like to crank my shadows unless there's a very, very specific reason. But that's one way you can usually see or tell an amateur photographer is they love to crank their shadows, and it just makes their images look funky. Yeah, I think we're getting close. I'm going to play with my contrast. I like some nice rich blacks in the background over here. We have some good midtones, some good highlights. Let's see if I bring down my... We'll have to play with the highlights a little bit more when I bring my color back in. So I'm going to hit the letter V again to bring my color back. And that looks pretty good. We will see, we'll go back, hit backspace, or excuse me, backslash. There's our before image. Hit backslash again. There is the contrast that we've edited into it and done a little bit of processing. I think this looks pretty good. We have to be careful. It looks like the reds are starting to clip right there. And when you start to have super strong colors like red and blue clip, I usually come in and pay attention to this area right there. I'm going to come in, go like -20 with my saturation, and then there we go, bump up. You can see that I brought back a little bit of this detail, and you can see here in the raw image, there's the detail, but I start to lose it when I add too much contrast. So this is where I said I'm going to pull my highlights back down. There we go. I'm getting a tiny bit more detail in there. It's not critical. It's just me being a bit of a pixel peeper and really zooming in to 100% and messing with this. I'm going to turn down the texture just to make this nice and smooth over in this smooth out of focus area right here. I'll zoom out. I'm going to see, I love playing with the dehaze tool. It can be a lot of fun for adding contrast. That looks cool. And sometimes I'd like to turn it back a little bit to add a little bit more haze in there. It looks like fog. And then crank my blacks down. That'll give you some really rich shadows. I'm going to reset dehaze. I'm going to put it toward the positive side. I think 30-ish looks good. I'm going to zoom into the face here. Since we're not seeing the face, and we're not seeing any skin tones or anything like that, I might not want to lose texture. Maybe I'll add texture in this case. That looks pretty good. And adding the texture should bring some of this Spidey costume, make it a little bit sharper. I think that looks pretty good. And sometimes I'll play with clarity. Yeah, clarity is a bit much. I think I'm going to reset that back to 0. That looks pretty good. I'm going to turn up the entire exposure, about 1/4 of a stop. Add a touch more contrast. I'm liking where this is going. And then let's try, let's see. What can I do? I'm going to play with my detail and my sharpening kind of while I'm thinking. You can hit this little crosshair right here, and I can drag it over to, I'm not dragging, I'm just going to click right there. There we go. Now I can get a nice sharp area of my image that I want to sharpen. And I have this issue a lot with the Z6, or at least the metadata when I open it up in Lightroom. Oh, what's up, Noe? Welcome to the live stream, man. Glad to have you here. What time is it where you're at? It's about 8:30 over here in Colorado. We'll add a little bit of detail. It's hard to see detail sometimes when you're zoomed out, so I will zoom in. Again, I'm going to hold Alt. It turns my image black and white so I can actually see the amount of detail I'm adding. And that looks pretty good. If I add too much detail or sharpening, it might be hard to see, but there are some very fine lines in the fabric of this costume, and I'll just start to get some weird artifacting and probably some like aliasing or moire or something like that, and craziness that I really don't want any sort of weird patterns or, made up lines that aren't really there popping up in this costume. I'd like it sharp, but not distractingly sharp with anything crazy. Like sometimes you'll see in like a screen door on a camera, you'll see some zigzaggy lines and weird moire and aliasing is what it's called. Don't want that happening. I think we're pretty close with this image. 12:30 in the afternoon, not too shabby. I keep forgetting we're so far off in time zones. But yeah, awesome to have you here, man. I'll probably might be using some of your expertise as I go through and mess around with these images. I was just telling these guys before that were in the live chat, messing with some new audio equipment. Audio is probably the most important part of a live stream. Nobody wants to listen to 2 hours of really crappy audio. I'm actually going to change my zoom here. I don't always like zooming into 100%. Sometimes you just kind of want to zoom into like, 33 or 50, especially if you're working on a smaller screen. Kind of get the gist of what your image looks like. Fill up this little section of the screen without having to worry about taking up your whole screen at 100% zoom. So what I'm going to do, I think I'm going to play around with some of my HSL sliders. As we saw, our reds and our oranges were kind of hot down here. I usually like doing like a 1 to 2 zoom. These are pretty darn hot, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to play with, let's think here, a little bit of the saturation and a little bit of the luminance, and maybe we'll play around with some of the hue of these neon signs. But right now I'm going to hit my targeted adjustment tool, and I'm going to drag down to turn down the saturation. That's way too much. Just a touch. And again, this, I'm just kind of experimenting. This may not be the best option. I might have to play with luminance a little bit. You don't want to bring it down too much because, again, it's a bright area that these lights are kind of bouncing off of. So that might not be the option. I might have to actually go all the way back to my white balance and turn down the red in the white balance and make this image a little bit cooler. So let's see what that does. All right, loading. We'll zoom out. I think that had the desired effect. That brought back some of the detail in this kind of blown out area of the image. I'll also bring down my highlights a touch more. Again, you got to be careful with, actual lights and bring down your highlights too much sometimes. You can make your lights turn gray, and sometimes it looks a little bit funky. But then I like to come back here with my whites and add in a touch of white. But I am going to use that radial filter on the face like we did earlier. Let's take a look at my mask overlay. And right there looks pretty good. Let's line this up with the face. I think that looks pretty good. Turn this mask overlay off. And I'm just going to add, I don't want to go too heavy with it. Turn up the exposure a bit. Maybe turn up the contrast a bit. And a touch of whites. There we go. Just to add that little bit of a pop to the face. Maybe I'll cool down the face a touch, because these This red is super strong. Might have to add a little bit of a tint on the green, because I don't want these colors to clip, and that's going to be one of my biggest issues I have here. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And maybe I will add in some warm values like I did with the other portrait, just a touch. Not feeling it. Let's try something cool instead, kind of like a cyan-ish color. That's cool. That added a little bit more contrast. It brought down some of our harsh highlights over here. I'm going to feather that a touch more. Wait for it to load. Hit done. I think that looks pretty good. Bring up our vibrance a touch more. That looks good. Now let's play with some of our HSL. Let's play with our hues a little bit. I love this kind of, pink and blue. Maybe I want to go a little bit red. Oh, I like that purple. You got to be careful if you, crank those sliders a little bit too heavily. Let's see, I want to turn my greens a little more blue. Turn these aquas a little deeper blue. You can see that happening right there. I'll play with my blue. Oh, that's too much. You can see I kind of just, broke the color there. Didn't look too good. Turn my blue a touch towards, the darker blue, purplish. Yeah. See, I just like experimenting a little bit, seeing what happens. That's a little bit too much pink, but it actually works pretty well for this image. And then turning, I don't want my magentas to go too red. I really like those deep purpley magentas, and actually might take my red hues and kind of go towards the purple side. Yeah, it's looking a little bit crazy. So if it's ever too much, come on. There we go. I can double click on the word hue, or let's say my saturation was way too much. I can double click on the word saturation and it will reset everything. I think I was going a little bit heavy handed with that. I think, again, sometimes it's always coming back up to, it's always going back to the basics. That's why I like why they call this the basic editing tab. When I notice one of these tabs is getting hard to work with, I always go back to the basics. And right now, going back to the basics means I'm going to have to tint this a lot farther towards the green. Just the pinks and the magentas and the reds are way too heavily saturated, and I'm going to have to kill them quite a bit. So I'm going to white balance off of this side of the mask, I think. And let's see what happens. This might go crazy or this might work. There we go. Okay, I did exactly what I wanted to do. I really brought this towards the blues and the purples, and we're fixing some of the issues we had with the reds and the clipping. Again, I'm going to bring my exposure up a touch. 2 looks pretty good. Maybe that was too much. 1.8. It's much. I'll leave. I appreciate it, Noe. Thank you so much for dropping into the chat and taking a look. Enjoy that lunch, and I can't wait to see you on your next live stream. And if you guys are not subscribed to Noe yet, definitely check out his neon noir photography and his, Noe is the rain neon photographer. That is who he is. That's who he's branded himself as, and he does some amazing stuff. As you can see, my neon stuff is highly inspired by Noe. And if you're not subscribed to his channel, check it out, and you will be stuck there for hours watching his content. So appreciate you coming into the stream, man. Always inspired by your stuff. Super awesome. So yeah, we will jump kind of back to our white balance here. Neon is some hard stuff to shoot. I think a lot of people just get excited. They see neon lights and just kind of want to, pop off a bunch of images. But it takes some patience. Sometimes you get lucky, and sometimes it is a mess. I think I bumped up the shadows a little bit too harsh, a little bit too much there. Pork cutlet. Oh man, that sounds good. I just made some chicken pita wraps They're pretty good with some lettuce and tomato and some grilled chicken on the stove, but yeah, it sounds really good, man. All right, I'm going to add a touch more of that dehaze. I love what dehaze does. It's almost like a more subtle clarity, because clarity is almost too strong. I wish clarity, like, you could go in almost half increments sometimes, or just did made its effect happen a little bit slower, or there's a way to really tone it down. Clarity is just usually too much sometimes, but we're getting close. Let's backslash, take a look at, this is what we started with. So we have come a long way. We've been working on this image for a good 20 minutes now, but when I'm going to publish something on, say, Instagram, I'm going to spend at least probably an hour to hour and a half sometimes on a single image. And then what I can do is I can just Command Shift copy, or sorry, Command Shift C, or Control Shift C, copy all of my settings, hit everything that I want to copy over, and then just Command V on another image over here. Command V. Everything will paste, my crop, my everything that I decided that I wanted to bring over from my other image, and then I didn't have to go through all of that editing all over again on another image. So it's worth spending the time to do it right in the first place. And again, you can see I had a super slow shutter speed. ISO is super low at 50. I think 50 is the lowest you can go on the Z6. And then I was wide open at 1.4. That's why so many of these images were out of focus. Again, my saturation is still a bit much. We're clipping those colors, and if you notice, colors are super harsh, and clipping, saturation is the first thing I go to, and I turn that way down along with my highlights. Now you can see after it took some trial and error, but I love doing that with you guys, the trial and error of going back and forth and kind of learning through the process of actually doing it. We brought back that detail here by getting as close as we could to a proper white balance. You can see the uniform or the costume is almost properly white. I think 2000 is the lowest you can go. Let's see if we can go any lower. Nope. 2000 to 50,000 is the lowest you can go with white balance. Sorry, just answering some text messages again as I go. But again, we properly white balanced. I'm actually going to tint this a little bit more. Let's try negative 100 just to try and get some of this back again. But our sign was so heavily tinted towards the pink magenta that adding this much green is not going to turn my image completely green. It'll make my background look a little funky. You can see this in the background starting to look green, but that's okay. That's there we go. Some of this detail is back. That looks pretty darn good. You can see our bokeh is getting a little bit crazy. Maybe I'll go back to negative 90. It's all experimenting. That's kind of what I want to get across. Let's try negative 80 if I want to add more magenta in there. I really love the kind of bluish magenta. This really unintentionally has a very kind of, I guess, a vaporwave or kind of a cyberpunky vibe a little bit. Or like that Outrun vibe that I really love. We're going to add a touch more contrast. We're getting very close with this image. This is, hit that backslash again, the before, the after. Yeah, I'm going to go back to the negative 90. I love that magenta in this image. And I will start playing around. Whoops, not lens corrections. I'm going to start playing around with the calibration a little bit. And I'm going to start tinting my shadows a little bit towards that magenta side. There we go, it's starting to look good. And when you've kind of maxed out your values in the basic tab, this is where you can come down to this calibration tab and really start playing with your colors and kind of making them funky, or just doing, you know, basic corrections. Right now I'm going to play with my greens. I'm going to try and get these greens to go towards more of a yellow. That looked pretty cool. I'm not sure what I just did. I took some of the greens out of the image. I'm going to desaturate. Let's see if this will completely desaturate these greens. Yeah, not quite what I'm going for. That makes the image kind of feel unbalanced. I'll play with my blues a little bit. Bring the blues over towards the cyan side a little bit, just kind of see what happens. And I apologize, Lightroom is kind of chugging a little bit. Oh yeah, that looks pretty cool. But I actually might go ahead, I was just kind of giving you guys an example, I might go ahead and do some of this in my HSL tab. Take some of these blues, turn some of the darker blues purple, or I can go a little bit more towards this cyan side, and they're starting to clip a little bit with the blue, so I'm going to desaturate a hint. There we go, that's starting to look good. Luminance, we're a little bit hot in the blues, so I'm going to bring down the brightness of the blues a little bit. And again, just kind of keep playing with my saturation and keep playing with the hue as well. I love this targeted adjustment tool, what I can do with it. The only thing, I mentioned this before, you have to be very careful. If I absolutely hold this down and I crank it, you'll start to see some of these gradients kind of break a little bit. And you definitely don't want that to happen. There we go. I love these super crazy magenta colors. They work so well for this shoot. Now it's a matter of just, you know, sometimes you kind of push the wrong thing too far, it goes too far, and you gotta, you know, bring it back to the beginning. And I'm gonna go back down to the calibration because I think that may have been the right way to do this. Turn some of my reds a little more orange. Let's see if we can get this. There we go, get that beam. That's a bit yellow for my taste. I don't think yellow really belongs. Maybe we'll pull it back towards the red. I'm just playing, and that looks kind of cool. A nice hot pink right in there. Let's take our greens and move our greens towards the blue. I think we moved them towards the yellow earlier, and that wasn't working out for me. Made our greens super harsh. We'll desaturate them a little bit and move our blues towards the purple. Let's see. Again, all I'm doing here is I'm experimenting. Here's our before, here's our after. We're almost in this kind of weirdish monochrome green purple. A little bit crazy for me. Let's see before we did that. Yeah, I like that orange in there a little bit better. So I think, you know what, sometimes you can just process an image way too hard and you can just push it way too far, and that's super easy to do. I've been sitting staring at this computer screen for an hour and 50 minutes now, kind of blinding myself looking at Lightroom and looking at very, very similar images. What I can do, if you want, we can go and I'm not sure who is still in the live chat. All looky there, Sweet Lou's still here. Or, you know, how many people we still have watching. Hopefully you guys are not super bored of watching me in Lightroom yet. But again, anybody watching, please feel free to drop any sort of comments. Drop any sort of comments you can think of in the live stream chat. I'd love to hear from you. Even if you don't have a question, I'd love to, you know, say hi, whatever, in the live chat. Really appreciate you guys coming by. I think maybe I'll edit for, you know, about 15 more minutes. Just gonna grab a breather. I've been talking quite a bit. Sip my coffee for a minute. I'm gonna answer a couple text messages, but yeah, I super, you know, appreciate you guys being here for the live chat. I hope this audio, I'm going to listen to it later. I hope this audio sounds better. I'm actually, monitoring my audio and trying some new mics. I'm just kind of experimenting with voiceover mics. And who knows, maybe a photography podcast is in the future. So we'll see. But I'm going to take a minute break real quick, grab some coffee, answer some text messages, and I'll get back to Lightroom in just a minute. I am going to switch over to a little temporary screen real quick. So I have my, excuse me, I have my little default screen right here. So again, we're going to take a 2-minute break. Yeah, let's do a 2-minute break. It is 8:52 right here. So at 54, we're going to come back. Feel free, grab a coffee, use the restroom, whatever, and then we'll go on for another few minutes. And then we will wrap this live stream up. But again, appreciate you guys having you guys here. And I will be back as soon as I warm up my coffee. All right, testing 1, 2, 3. Audio is back. Audio sounds good. I just got a fresh cup of coffee. I've actually been trying to give up coffee for the last couple weeks. And I was pretty successful. And then today I went and I got a big Starbucks. And the day before that, I went and I got a big Dunkin' Donuts coffee. And now I just made myself a fresh hot cup of coffee. So let's get back into Lightroom. Let's open up Lightroom. And we're going to go to, there's my screen. Oh, excuse me. Okay, let's see. We are here in Lightroom. Perfect. All right, so I So my stream is saying that there are about 3 people watching. Hope you guys are enjoying this. If you don't want to chime in on the chat, that's cool. I think most people have kind of left the chat, but again, feel free to ask questions in the chat. I'm here to answer your guys' questions. I was hoping a couple more of these guys would be in here, going back and forth. But if you guys want to ask any sort of questions, I don't mind editing for like another hour if you guys are enjoying this, or if you're just listening, however you want to do that. Listening in the background or watching the live stream. But I have nothing really crazy going on tonight. I'm an extremely boring person on a Friday night, so I don't mind editing photos for another hour or so. So we can go until 9 o'clock my time if we get somebody in the chat that says, hey, I like the live stream, keep going. Or if someone says, hey, I hate your guts, please stop live streaming. Let me know. I would love the feedback. So I'm just going to double check to make sure everything is audio is up and video is up. We've been live streaming for about 2 hours now. Yep, everything looks good so far. So I'm going to get back to Lightroom, and I think my eyes were just kind of hurting staring at that one image. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to find another one. And I said, we'll kind of just go hard on one of these images. I like these wider shots and how they turned out with the prism. They look pretty good. And then here you can see I transitioned. No, we put the mask on, but then we're having some issues here with the mask kept popping up with the elastic in the costume. So then what I did is I kind of had her cover it up, but I don't know how much I like that pose. It feels, I guess, kind of like I don't know. I don't think the pose worked as well. Now in some of the tighter shots, I think it worked. But in the wider shots, I don't think it worked as well. I like this one. I like this one a lot. So let's try and find a variation of this kind of close-up. Oh, that looks cool. That looks really cool. So we're getting close. I can, this shoot was so long ago. I don't know if you guys have this problem. I'm going to close this window real quick. There we go. This shoot was so long ago. I don't know if you have this issue. You guys, if you go do a shoot and you don't touch the memory card for like 2 or 3 months, and then you come back like a couple months later to edit your images, and you're like, what the heck was I even thinking when I was shooting this? And I find it really difficult to edit sometimes if I just leave my images sitting around for too long and I don't edit them essentially fast enough. I'm kind of like, what the heck was I even thinking when I was shooting this? I'm not in the same mindset, creatively. And I just kind of wonder, like I said, what the heck was I thinking shooting this? And so my brain is just kind of not in the same creative space. And I mean, that is the best way I can describe it. What the heck was I thinking? Because clearly some of these images I'm looking at, and I was like, how the heck was I, composing these? When it comes to editing, there we go. We're going to straighten this one out a little bit. I was kind of rough on myself. I didn't make it. I usually shoot just a tiny bit wider than I need to, just so I can have a couple different crops. And when I was shooting, I wasn't necessarily thinking about the edit the entire time, and shot some of these a little bit tight, but I think this composition looks pretty darn good. We're going to zoom in, make sure those eyes are tack sharp. Yeah, that looks great. While I'm thinking about it, I'm just going to mess with my sharpening right now. And again, you guys feel free to ask any sort of questions. Doesn't even have to be photography related. I will probably regret saying that, but feel free, just to ask anything, freaking anything. I don't care. Could be about work. Again, I'm I'm an Air Force photographer, so feel free to ask any work related questions. That is fair game. I will answer what I can, and hopefully I won't have to kill you. But that's a joke. Let's play with our noise reduction again. ISO 100, so there's really not much noise at all going on here. Super text sharp, and then again, my eye over here, my left, her right, is the one that's in focus because that's the one that has the most light. We almost have a split lighting. You can see it kind of goes right down the center of the face coming from this neon light. I really like this image. I didn't see this one before when I was going through. I'm actually glad we are doing this edit and that I found this image. So we did our sharpening. That looks pretty darn good. Now we're going to play with manually white balancing this image. Here we go. We want to bring some of those nice cool blues back and balance this image out. Our reds were just way too hot and we had way too much, purple magenta going on. And it's still there. We're not losing it. We're just we're taming it a little bit. We're putting that magenta on a bit of a leash because it was way too crazy. There we go. I think an exposure, bring it up one stop, looks pretty darn good. And if you guys have never done this before, the histogram in Lightroom is really awesome because you can see, check out when I click and drag, I can play with my exposure by clicking and dragging right here in the histogram. And you can see the little label that comes up underneath. You can see blacks, shadows, exposure, highlights, and then my whites over here. So if I see that it looks like my whites are clipping, maybe I'll bring them down a touch. If my highlights are clipping over into the white, maybe I'll bring them down a little bit. But again, it's really fun to edit up here. It's a great visual way, and I love that Lightroom added this. I'm not sure which version they added in. It's been there as long as I can remember. But clicking and dragging in the actual histogram, it just makes the whole editing experience a lot more fun. So I'll make this window a little bit bigger. And again, I like to edit in black and white because I'm weird like that. And I think it shows the contrast a lot better without the color. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a hint of contrast. Make sure we have some nice white values there. But I will bring down our highlights a touch. And bring back, our white values. There is going to be a little bit of clipping going on there. And some values in the blacks. I'm actually losing some detail in the eyes, so I want to bring back, it depends. I'm going to go back to my color mode now. I've gotten pretty far. That looks pretty darn good. Let's go to the before and then after. I think our contrast is looking really good. This image is getting pretty close to where I want it to be, just in the basic tab right here. That's looking pretty darn good, and I am very, very happy with it so far. So what we last did, we were playing around with our shadows, just adding a touch, but I like that kind of mysterious dark side of the face, so I really don't want to add shadows. Or excuse me, I do want to add shadows. I don't want to bring the shadow slider up. And we're going to try this radial filter. I only want to bring up about half of the face. So let's see if we can kind of do this with some surgical precision. And I might use multiple radial filters. I might do one here, and I might do one here across, kind of like the chest and maybe the hand. So let's see if we can add maybe a third of a stop. But I don't want my highlights to clip, so that's where it's going to be fun. This is all a matter of just playing with sliders and messing around and seeing what happens. So that looks all right. There we go. Don't want any sort of clipping, especially on the face. It's okay if your neons are clipping, your lights are clipping. The actual brightest part of your image is clipping. I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with is, spots on the face clipping. That really kind of drives me nuts. And where's it? Cameron's back. Awesome. So Noe is actually from, I believe, Seoul, South Korea. He does a lot of awesome stuff in Korea, doing his neon lights and all sorts of neon craziness down there. So I would highly recommend finding him. If you start typing his name into Instagram or into YouTube, he'll pop up pretty darn quick. Excuse me again. Noe will pop up really quick if you start typing his handle into Instagram, and you can see some of his awesome work on there. And then again, if anybody else in here's listening, my Instagram is at RunNGun Photo. So feel free to follow me on Instagram. These images are going to get posted pretty soon. Probably, I'd like to post at least one of these this weekend. I've been sitting on them for a long time, and they really need to get published. So here's another instance of where I would, bring down my texture just a hint. Yeah, those, it almost makes the face just kind of glow while still keeping the sharpness when you play with texture. It's all a matter of, kind of playing with your individual image, because every image is going to be a little bit different, and you're going to have to make those artistic decisions and take that license upon yourself and kind of do what you need to do with your imagery. I desaturate this a hint. There we go, and then add it back with the vibrance. There we go. So we have extremely bright, hardcore saturated colors. Excuse me, extremely bright colors, and they're not clipping, which is great. That's why I will always recommend vibrance, but when you do that, make sure you bring down your saturation a touch. And then we're going to play with dehaze now. Dehaze is really nice to use, especially if you are using a prism. Dehaze is great because you can see kind of these hazy parts of the prism where the light is being dispersed and reflected and refracted and bent and manipulated in all sorts of ways, which is awesome. But you always kind of get this hazy feel to the part of your image where the light's being reflected and refracted, because there are so many different kinds of light from so many other areas of the image. You're not just getting, the pure neons. I'm getting all sorts of light from back here, reflections from over here, reflections from the wall, whatever, sodium, vapor, tungsten light, whatever fingerprints were on this thing, making it hazy. Dehaze is just kind of a great tool. Again, we're looking at the before, the hazy, and then I can kind of add some nice contrast and saturate that prism a little bit more, and I think that looks pretty awesome. And to be honest, I am super happy with this image. Looks pretty darn good. Just gonna double check our detail, make sure sharpening looks good. What I am gonna do is, I forgot our radius is at 2. I'm gonna turn that down to just about 1. Get that very fine sharpening, add a little bit more detail. And we did lose some detail when we did when we turn the texture down. So the face is so far away, I might actually turn the texture up. I lied, I'm not going to do that. Let's see, I think the texture actually at 0 looks pretty darn good. Or maybe -10. Let's try -10. No, I think that looks great. The eye is nice and sharp. The skin is nice and smooth. You can see we still have some in focus, this little neon tube right there. That looks great. The hand looks great. I am super happy with the way this image turned out. We can look at our mask, kind of the before and after. I'd like to turn this on and off and just kind of see what our mask looks like on and off. Yeah, very subtle. Some of the best edits are just the very subtle ones where, you're not drowning your subject in, crazy colors. I'm going to add a little bit of blue to the face. And I think that might be what it's missing. Cool it down a touch. Add a little bit more, bluish cyan. All right. Now turn that off. And turn it back on. That looks pretty good. Yeah, I am liking the way this edit turned out. Let's see. Yeah, Cameron, let me know if you have any questions. My chat's being a little bit laggy on my end, but yeah, let me know if you have any questions on editing, anything like that as we go. Hit enter, and that looks pretty good. So let's see if we can, without crashing my laptop, open up Photoshop. And we're going to go into Lightroom, and what I want to do is I am going to edit this in Adobe Photoshop CC. So what we're going to do is we are going to make these neons really glow. And I did a tutorial about this probably 2 weeks ago now. You can check it out on my channel. Here we go. I'll let it load real quick while Photoshop is booting up. But you'll see I did, there we go, reading raw format. Photoshop just wants to be super slow. But you'll see I did a video about 2 weeks ago on neon glows. And hopefully my front page won't start doing anything crazy. Hey, look, we're still live. We've got 3 people watching. Awesome. Yeah, how to create dreamy neon glows in Photoshop. And we're going to go over a little bit of that right now since you guys are here. But if you'd like to go back and you want to reference any of that, definitely watch this video about neon glows. It's how you take your image and you just really take it to the next level. So what we're going to do, we just took our image and we edited it in Photoshop, or we click the Edit in Photoshop button. And what we're going to do now is we have our background layer. I'm going to hit Command J on a Mac or Control J on a PC. We just duplicated this layer. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to Image, Apply Image. And we're going to keep all these settings the same. We want our source image, looks good. Merged layer, channel RGB. Most of these will be just like this, but if they're not, copy and paste this. And then you want your blending mode to be multiply. So we're going to hit OK. And you can see what that did is essentially created 2 layers, set the top one to multiply, and it merged them into 1 layer. So we have our before image that we edited in Lightroom, and we have our applied image layer right here. And what that did was crush our blacks, crush our midtones, and really kind of just focuses right here on our highlights. So that looks good. And what I'm going to do is set this layer to screen, and it just adds a touch to the highlights, makes it a little bit brighter. And now we're going to add our blur. So we're going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And here we go. So now I'm going to turn down my blur a bit. It was at 80, so usually, this really depends on your image. Now, you can have an image where your neons are super far away and a radius of 4 or 5 looks good, or maybe your neon, you can see the neon, tube right here. It's super close, and you have to do a much larger glow to make it look more realistic. When I'm doing most of my portraits, I usually stick between 30 and 50 for my radius. Sometimes I'll go all the way up to 100 or 150 if I want my image to look super soft and super dreamy. But in this instance, I'm thinking somewhere around 30, 40, 50 looks good. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to do some more working on this, but I'm going to say that looks pretty good. I'm going to hit OK. And then now we have a very soft image. That looks pretty great. But as you can see when we zoom in, it is still nice and sharp in the eyes. The only thing that's soft is our highlights. Our neons have a nice, very subtle, well, not subtle, it's a very in-your-face, dreamy glow, but it looks awesome. I think that looks great. And what I can do is I can actually make a mask of where I want these neon glows to actually be. Maybe it's too much right here in the face. Maybe the glow is too much in the hands, and I want to soften it up. We have our create a mask button right here. I'm going to hold Alt, create a mask, and you'll see all of our glow just disappeared. That's because our mask is black, and what we're going to do now is paint it in with white. So I'm going to hit the B as in Bravo or brush, and we're going to start painting in white where we want to see glow. So I'm going to turn my opacity down to maybe 50%, make my brush pretty large, probably closer to 500. No, that's still too small. Whoops. I'm just going to go ahead and break Photoshop. Make my brush about 1,000 pixels. Hardness of 0, nice soft edge. And I'll probably make my brush even bigger. That's probably closer to 1,800, 2,000 pixels. And now as I brush in white, you can see we're working on this mask here. I am brushing in the glow. This is why masks are so much fun to play with. And I can brush in the glow everywhere I want it and not have the areas where I don't want it. So I'll just do some kind of like long streaks here. And you can see I'm painting in over here. The white areas are where the glow is going to be, and the black areas are where the glow is not going to be by using this mask. Masks in Photoshop are pretty awesome. I might add a hint of glow to the side of this, the model's face. Let's do a quick tap, and a quick tap there. There we go. Now the skin, again, just has a 50%. I turned down the opacity a little bit, but the skin has just a very subtle glow, and I think that looks great. There's no glow in the hair, no glow in the eyes. We just have our neon glow and then our hint of almost kind of like, it just looks dreamy. It just looks really good. But, the skin just looks like it's glowing, and it looks really awesome. Almost looks like old film, how you would have some sun rays kind of bounce off skin, and skin just looks like it glows in some sorts of film. But we'll turn this layer off, and we'll turn it back on. And you can see now we have just the glow affecting our, neon bright areas of the image. And maybe that's not enough, and I want more glow. I can always just Command J, duplicate that layer. And honestly, that looks pretty darn good. That might be a bit much. But for the sake of this image, I think that looks pretty darn good. I am super happy with it. I may go in at this point, add some LUTs. Who knows, maybe try a mixture of like my RunNGun Cool and Lifted LUT with my RunNGun Warm Portrait LUT. But yeah, I think that looks pretty great. I'm going to close that out. I'm going to come back and do some other things to it before I actually put it on Instagram. But that was kind of a 0 to 100 of the edits of one of my neon images. If you guys are sick of neons, feel free to let me know. I could edit neon images all night long because I think they're a blast. But if there's any other images that you'd like to see me edit, feel free to ask. I'll see what I can pull up on my hard drive. Oh man, I am I am getting sick, and that is not going to be fun. But I think maybe the coffee helps, and I'm sure sleep helps too. But that looks pretty. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I'm happy with it. Let's look in one of my other folders. Let's see what I have. What do I have in landscape that I might be able to edit? Now, I think, yeah, I took all of those off of this drive, and I put those onto another hard drive. Same thing with Neon Spidey. I backed these up on a hard drive, but you can see this is the shoot that kind of started it all, with my buddy Eli from New York. Last time I was, 2 trips ago when I was down there, April of 2019. Yeah, we did this shoot with Eli with his Spider-Verse costume. I absolutely love that movie, and Eli does the persona of Miles very well, and just he has a very good handle on the character, and his cosplay looks amazing, and got me. I mean, Eli's the one that got me into kind of the cosplay world. Hey, still got my folder from my editing collab I did with Noe. We did double exposures in our last live stream. I think we definitely did those to death with editing in the last live stream. But if you want to see more of these double exposures and see what I did with those, how I edited those, be sure to check out my last live stream. Let's see, and I think this is an old. Ooh, these are some New York images that are really old, beginning of 2019. Let's see, portraits of Syracuse. Yeah, I think I backed up quite a few of my shoots to my hard drive. Let's see, one of my Dave and Buster shoots that was just a blast to do. Came out with so many good images from this shoot. And I still probably have, a good 10 images that I still want to publish from this shoot as well. Well, I did tell you guys that I would show you how to mess around with collections in Lightroom. So if you've never used collections, let's actually do that right now. We will start from scratch with an import, and we'll make a new collection, and I'll kind of explain how collections work as we go. So I'm just going to do a quick double check, make sure. Looks like our live stream. Make sure our stream is still good. Okay, yeah. YouTube is just yelling at me that I have a crappy internet connection, and I apologize for that, but there's not much I can do with it. So here we go. We have Lightroom open, and we're going to go through an entire import, and I'll show you guys how I import, how I organize, and I think it's really easy to kind of lose your images in Lightroom. And if I just go down here and I go to all photographs, I get this tiny little bar, and here's 7,000 photos. These are just from 2019, most of them. And this isn't even every image I've shot. I've probably shot closer to 30,000 images just this year alone. And if I go back, the last 2-3 years, probably closer to 100,000 images. But it's super easy with this tiny little bar just to completely get lost in Lightroom. And let's say I'm trying to find a very specific image. I have all these photos. There's some concert photos, some jewelry photos. I'm at the state fair. There's Aerosmith. Here's waterfalls and waterfalls. Here's an NFL game. Here's Maine. Here's Michigan. Here's New York, Colorado, London, back to New York. Here's actually, here we go. Here's my old bellows camera that I was telling you guys about. If you haven't seen it already, I've posted about it a little bit. But my 100-year-old bellows Kodak camera, this thing, I did a little natural light photo shoot with it. But you can see here these bellows, if you're paying attention earlier, they're made out of some kind of weird cardboard, and being 100 years old and being taken back and forth hundreds or thousands of times, closed up and then expanded and closed up and expanded. There's some, tiny little holes or light leaks in there, and I have to go and fix those before, I throw an expensive roll of film in there. But other than that, the camera still works, and we are going to do some photo shoots on this guy. I hope you're excited for that. I am. I'm planning to do that in probably, January. What I want to do is, this guy actually has a 1/4-20 tripod screw on the bottom of this. It has one right here. Oh, excuse me. And it has one, on the bottom on the opposite side as well. I'll see if I can find an image of it. I don't know if I have. I don't really have a 360 necessarily. There it is. Let's try and find a slightly brighter image. You can see the actual, come on. You might be able to see it in this one. There's a 1/4-20 screw right here under that little flap. And there's one right there. Again, to take that 1/4-20 screw so I can put this on a tripod. And my plan was actually, inspired by Ansel Adams, who is just an absolute master of black and white photography, was to go out with some like Ilford 120 film. And I think there's like 16 exposures per roll of film. And just take this up into the mountains, up into the Rockies, put it on a tripod so I can really, focus on composition. And you can see the shutter speeds right here. You can see 1/25th, bulb mode, time mode, and a 50th of a second. And then I just have these little markers right down here. You can see actually my aluminum aperture right there. I don't know what these correspond to. And yeah, you can see, I think, 1913, so 106 years old. It's over a century year old. An Eastman Kodak #1 Junior. I have these little aperture marks right here, but I don't know, exactly if I were to take an exposure meter out on a trip with me. I'm not 100% sure, where exactly, is this, F16 and this is, F32 or F64? Who knows? I don't. So I'm going to have to go out with a couple rolls of film and just kind of experiment. But I like to go out there with a tripod, kind of mimic Ansel Adams. Super inspired by Ansel Adams, but love to mimic his landscape photography work with that very contrasty, black and white film look. And I think shooting a medium format, something a little bit bigger than 35 mil, would be a lot of fun. So what we were doing, I was going to show you guys collections. So what I'm going to start off by doing, opening this tab right here, and you can see all of these collection sets that we have. And a collection set is like a bin. You can see the little icon like here. Here is a little bin, and this is like a bin of photos. And I put each of my photo shoots in a different bin. And this, again, this does not move anything on your hard drive at all. What this does is creates essentially a map within Lightroom. I'm going to try and visualize this for you guys as well as I can. And what it does is it creates a map to your hard drive, between Lightroom and your hard drive, to where the photos are stored. It's not changing where your photos are stored. It's just organizing the file names within Lightroom in these bins. And I can put, this photo, I can put it in this bin, and I can put it in another bin. I can have it in two separate bins, and it's still just the one photo on my hard drive, but Lightroom essentially creates another set of metadata in case I want to, organize this image. Let's say I have a bin full of black and white photos, and I have a bin full of, pictures of my cameras, and I have a bin full of pictures that I took when I was in Syracuse. I could have this image in all three bins, and Lightroom would just link each of those bins to the one spot where the photo is actually located on my hard drive. And I don't have, three multiples of this image on my hard drive, and I wouldn't be taking up, a ton of space. So we'd be taking up a bunch of space if I was, doing multiples and multiples and multiples of the same photo. And again, I can do, since it's metadata, I can do edits to each of these images. And again, it's not creating an entire other image on my hard drive. It's just creating, another little section of binary numbers that's saying, when I open this folder, edit this image this way. So what I'm going to do, we have our bins, and if I say open up this shoot, you can see I have what look like little file folders. So these are individual file folders within the bin. So if that kind of creates a good visualization for you guys, this is like a giant filing cabinet. Think of your collections. I'll scroll to the top. Here's our collections tab. If you lose it, all you have to do is hit that little arrow right there, and it brings you all of your collections. So your collections, this whole collections tab is like a big filing cabinet. And here we have each of our drawers in the filing cabinet. And then let's say I want to open up this drawer that says England. I have, I happen to have, a bin within a bin right here. But right here, let's click all England photos. Now you can't just throw photos directly into a bin. They have to go into a folder. So once I create a bin, I start by creating the first folder, and I usually call it all. And that is just where every image goes in to start with. So again, it doesn't get lost in the mass of, 7,000 images. All I have to do is find my drawer, open up this bin, and then find the actual folder that that photo is in. And I can have as many bins and as many folders as I want, and I can have as many or as few images in each of the bins or folders as I want. So what we're going to do, that was kind of a big overview. Now we're going to actually go through it. We're going to start from ground zero, and we're going to walk through it step by step so you can see exactly how this works. Now, right now, let me get another sip of coffee real quick. Just give me just a second. All right. So right now, I have a folder on my desktop called Sunflowers. I just found this, I thought I lost these photos about 4 years ago. I was actually just going through CF cards today, and I refound all of these photos, and I was so excited because they're not great images, but there's some photos that I took in North Dakota, and I was just super upset that I lost them. So what I'm going to do is, I still have Cameron that was in the chat just a couple minutes ago. I still have this sunflower field shoot that he did with his wife. Remember when we edited those and I made that sunflower fields preset? That was Cameron, and this is Cameron's wife. So you can see kind of how the whole world is, or my whole world is interconnected. So what we're going to do, we're going to scroll up, and you see the little plus button. We're going to click that. We're going to go down to collection set, create collection set. And you'll see these options pop up. Now, I don't want to create this collection set or this bin or, filing folder, a filing drawer. I don't want to put a filing drawer inside of another filing drawer. There's almost no purpose for that. So I don't want to put it inside this one. I want it to be by itself. And we're going to call this one North Dakota Sunflowers. And again, we are just creating a new bin inside of our filing cabinet. And then we're going to go put folders in that bin. And then we're going to put photos in the folders. So we created that bin. Now let's scroll down because these are all alphabetical. Excuse me again. I love coffee, but it gives me a lot of indigestion and my stomach's going a little bit crazy. And then I have a nice, broken piece of crap chair that I got to replace eventually and get something that isn't falling apart because the hydraulics on. I thought it was a nice leather chair that came with this desk, but it's a piece of crap that just gets stuck on the carpet. And then I think I complained about it in one of my other videos. The hydraulic pump just kind of slowly goes down throughout my time when I'm live streaming. So again, just to review, we have our collections, which is our giant filing cabinet that'll be, in our office. Now we have this drawer, no photos selected. You see this drawer is empty. We're going to right click, create collection. So now this is what I want to do. We're going to create this collection, and I'm going to call this all North Dakota sunflower photos. Or what you can just do is you can call this all. That's what I usually do. And I want to create this, what I'm telling Lightroom to do right now when I create this collection is to, Cameron, sorry I missed your thing. That is, this is your shoot with your wife that we just went through a second ago. I'm going to show some of the photos, the sunflower photos I took in North Dakota a long time ago that I thought I lost. I was just kind of explaining that a second ago. Those were your photos in that collection set. So we're creating this folder called all. You can name this whatever the heck you want to. That's up to you. I like calling it all because that makes the most sense to me. So I'm just going to, again, call it all North Dakota sunflowers. Oh man, excuse me. And again, location, make sure you're checked inside collection set and inside our North Dakota sunflowers drawer right there, and hit create. And we'll let that load. Yeah, I really need to grab some food too. I need to get a refill on my coffee too, but I might just wait till the end of the live stream. So now, again, quick review again. I know you guys probably getting this pounded into your head, but I kind of forgot what it was until I went through it and did this like 4 or 5 times. So we've created our folder within our bin, within our filing cabinet. So now we are good to import. So what we're going to do is import, and this step is going to be important coming up. We select our source. I'm going to go to sunflowers. They're going to be a bunch of CR2s. They're from my Canon 5D Mark II, which I am actually going to be selling pretty soon. I just don't use it anymore. I have a GH5 and a Z6, so not that I don't like Canon, just don't have an updated Canon. So I like building minimal previews. There's, doing smart previews and one-to-one previews that you can do. That is a whole nother tutorial that we'll get into. I like to click Don't Import Suspected Duplicates, and then I'm going to click Add to Collection. This is the important part right here. And I'm going to scroll down, and usually your most recent thing is going to be highlighted, so be careful that you double check it. And Sunflower Field, was that it? No, it wasn't Sunflower Field. North Dakota sunflowers, that's what it was. And again, I can't just messily throw photos in a drawer. That's a mess, right? You want to put them in a folder in the drawer. It won't even let me put the photos there. I have to pick an actual folder. And that looks good. We have our folder highlighted. And then I always love to do keywords too, just so if I'm searching for an image later, it makes it easier to find. So for example, keywords, I might do ND for North Dakota, and I'll separate them with colons. Let's try North Dakota. You can do I think you can do colons, or excuse me, semicolons and commas. Let's try sunflowers, fields, Canon, sunset. Yeah, I think that's probably good. sunflower. All right, everything looks good. Yep, just a quick double check, and I'm going to hit import. So now we just wait a minute, grab a sip of coffee while you're waiting for your photos to import. Awesome, awesome, that's working. I'm going to go up to my develop tab right now. And as you can see, if you look, perfect. It even brought in my metadata. These photos are already edited. I'm so excited. I wasn't sure when I pulled these off the CF card if it was going to hold on to my edits. Oh, heck yeah. Oh man, you guys don't understand how excited I am. I lost these photos 4 years ago on a CF card. And I'm so glad I I found them. I just really, really enjoyed taking these images. Let's see if I can see the metadata. Hit Command I. See if it'll tell me when it's from. Yep, now Lightroom's going to glitch out a little bit. Yeah, that doesn't tell me where it's from. I think I might have to actually go onto my desktop. Where did I put it? Sunflowers. There we go. Yeah, it kept my XMP metadata. Let's see if I can figure out when these are. 2015. Yep, 4 years ago. Over 4 years ago. Dang, that's a long time ago. Yeah, I was I was stationed in North Dakota with the B-52 bombers that I had the opportunity to deploy with. But yeah, it was fun. I got to fly on the bombers. Maybe we'll talk about that in a different episode. But again, I'm just so ecstatic that I found these images. Again, I think I told you guys earlier I was going through old SD cards and CF cards, and sometimes I just, set a card down and forget about it for apparently a couple of years. And, here we are with photos from 4 years ago. I love this photo. This was one of the most, basic, rule of thirds photos that you could get, but I still liked it. I was using Fill Flash. That's why these photos are so saturated and, in my opinion, look really awesome. This was I'm going to full screen this here. This was one of my favorite photos I took that year. I remember it. I entered it in some sort of local, contest or something. But this was when Lightroom first introduced the dehaze tool. And you can kind of see that right here in these branches. And I'll go back to the settings in a second. Here we go. Dehaze of -11. And it just, how do I describe it? What happens is the dehaze almost kind of added this hazy fogginess to the leaves, and I thought it looked very surrealistic and very illustrated and editorialized, I guess, of a photo. I just think it turned out really neat. And like I said, I've been kind of upset for the last few years that I thought I lost this photo, and I didn't. So let's get back to talking about collections. So again, we're going to review one last time. Your collections is your giant filing cabinet. We have our filing drawers right here, or our bins. And then inside of our bins, we have our little filing folders with our photos inside. So what I want to do is, that's really cool that I have all of my folders or all of my photos in this folder, right? Well, what if I just want to post, 3 or 4 photos on Instagram, and I don't necessarily want to go through all these. I don't want to use stars of, this is a 1 star, this is a 2 star. I just want to figure out, what the heck am I going to put on Instagram? And that's it for right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, and I can right click anywhere here. I could right click up here if I wanted to. It doesn't really matter. Just right click, create collection. And I'm going to make sure I create that collection not inside of Light Leaks, but I want to make sure I create it inside of North Dakota Sunflowers. And I will call this folder IG for Instagram. And what I can do, I already have this photo selected. Maybe I selected all of a bunch of photos. I can decide to include those selected photos if I wanted to, but I'm not going to this point in time. I'm going to show you how to actually, put photos in these folders another way instead of having to import them. So we're going to hit create. And again, you can put photos in these collections via import, or I can click and I can drag. Or I can select, 1, hold control, 2, 3 images, click, and drag. So guess what? Now I have 4 images in this folder. I have 23 in here. I didn't remove those images from my all folder. This is still all of my images, but now when I, go into this folder, I just have my 4 images. And again, this did not create 4 more images on my hard drive. That's why this is so awesome and such a cool concept. It's creating, a duplicate of the image in Lightroom, but not on your hard drive. And let's try something out right here. So I'm going to select this. And let's say I still wanted to publish this on Instagram. And let's say I want to make an edit to this image. Let's say I want it to be color instead of black and white. Cool. So now it matches with the rest of the photos I'm going to post on Instagram. Let's go back and, oh, hey, look at there. It made it color as well. So I don't have to worry about editing 2 images. I edit the image in one spot, and again, because it's linked, it edited it here as well. If you did want separate images to edit them separately and have 2 different images or the same image with 2 different edits, I can create a virtual copy. And now this virtual copy is in this folder. We're going to make this one color. That's a little bit much contrast. We'll do some minor edits. Bring up the exposure a touch. Perfect. Now again, we did not create another copy on our hard drive. We just created another copy inside of Lightroom. And now, oh hey, I'd like to publish that one on Instagram too. Click. And we drag and drop. So again, this is the same image on our hard drive, just 2 little, sets of metadata that's hardly taking up any space on our hard drive. And that is all stored within your Lightroom catalog. So your Lightroom catalog essentially is that filing, the whole filing cabinet is your Lightroom catalog, if that is a good analogy, and if that's a good way for you guys to remember it. That's how I like to remember it. And that is the basics of Lightroom collections. Extremely powerful. I love the little film strip down here because it reminds me a lot of using Adobe Bridge, but Adobe Bridge does not have the ability to, organize and create, virtual collections, a whole virtual filing system where, again, you see I have, multiple versions of this sunflower, correct? Well, if I go back to my sunflower photo on my desktop, and let's see, where is that photo at? Right here. Oh, yep. What's that? I have one image number 8284. And then right here, we have image number 8284. And here's our image 8284 copy. But all we have on our hard drive is image 8284. That is pretty flippin' awesome. And then we just have our XMP metadata file, which takes up, 7 kilobytes. That's nothing. 6,000 bytes. That is about as close to nothing on a hard drive as you can get. So, versus duplicating a whole nother CR2 file, which is 23 megabytes, and that fills up pretty quick. So you guys can kind of see the importance of collections now in Lightroom. All right, so yeah, I was going to go through and I was going to edit some of these images, but it looks like a lot of them, as I said before, are already edited, which is great. Some of these didn't work. Some of these, again, you could see my shutter was getting a little bit faster than my flash. That's why there's this line right here. Your flash, I was not using high-speed sync. So when I was shooting at 3/20th of a second, I was shooting a little bit faster than my flash. That's why you can see that kind of, line cutting through my image right there. That was my mistake. Back in 2015, I was still really learning how to use high-speed sync and learning that you actually had to, turn it on and it wasn't going to do it all by itself. But here are a couple images that I did not edit yet. Yeah, I would love to see a collaboration shoot between Noe and Cameron. If you guys find a way to make that work, that would be awesome. I know Cameron can definitely learn a lot from Noe, especially with your street photography and just the way you see things. I think that would be a huge benefit. Here's a photo that I have not, again, 2015, I have not edited yet. Let's mess with it. Again, I shot this very specifically rule of thirds, and you can see this flower, look at that, dead center, rule of thirds. And you know what, sometimes rule of thirds, it just works. I think there's a bit of space in the sky that we don't necessarily need, so let's try this out. Hit OK. I mean, I like that photo. It feels pretty darn balanced to me. Let's turn up our exposure a touch. Push the button kind of guy. I think, well, I definitely wouldn't call you a push the button kind of guy. I think you are more focused than a lot of people, especially when it comes to like composition and color, which there's so much, like I feel the same way too. Like when I go out and shoot, sometimes I feel like all I'm doing is pushing the button. And then when somebody comes and, tags along with me that doesn't have as much experience, they go, oh, well, you're doing everything so fast. You're just pushing the button. I was like, well, sure, I'm pushing the button. But that's, years of experience behind pushing that button that makes pushing the button so much easier. Especially, Noah, you have some very complex compositions that I really enjoy, especially like with the symmetry, and you were doing that. Oh man, you do some crazy stuff that so much more that it feels like pushing a button sometimes, but so much more than that. I'm going to bring down my highlights. I want to bring back some of this in the sky, and I actually may use a gradient filter. I may save that for a little bit later. I'll bring up my detail on the shadows a hint. Again, I don't want to crank it. That looks really bad to me. But again, it's all subjective. Maybe you like cranking your shadows. That is up to you. Bring out some of the white values here. Really make this flower pop and crush some of the shadows. So there's what we started with. Added some pop or some contrast to that. That looks great so far. I'm going to use my gradient filter tool. Drag. Oh man, so what do I have on this? Oh, yep, I still blue from last time. I don't want the blue. I probably prefer, it was a sunset, so let's play with some of our colors. Because if we go too blue, oh, that actually looks really good, I think. Add that touch of blue. I saturate it. Yeah, let's not go too far, because I'm going to add some dehaze a little bit later. Actually, I could probably add my dehaze now. There we go. And let's turn that off and turn that on. Yeah, that actually looks really good. That's giving some balance between this yellow here and our blue sky, adding some contrast. And I'm actually going to make the gradient smaller, but I'm going to bring it down closer to the horizon. But I still want that fall off because there's always that little bit of fall off where it gets super desaturated because of the haze on the horizon. And if I get rid of that, that looks very fake. So you always want to keep that little bit of, cloudy haze on your horizon. You don't want to push it too far. But make our clouds pop a bit. But I will bring down, there we go. Get a little bit of detail, but you still want those nice whites in the clouds. Maybe bring down. You got to be really careful when you're bringing down your exposure in your sky. You don't want your clouds to turn gray. They will look pretty rough if you turn your clouds gray. So that looks pretty good. Turn that off. Turn that back on. That is a huge, huge difference. And I shot this with a 24 to 105 Canon lens. It is an f4 lens, and I shot it at 5.6. So shot super wide, so you can see that the horizon's kind of arcing a little bit, but I kind of like that. It makes it feel like, this little flower and, this big world of all of these flowers that really go about as far as the eye can see. There were, my guess would be, millions of flowers in this field. That's why I absolutely loved shooting sunflowers in North Dakota. I really wish I would have shot some models, with those. I need another sip of coffee. Oh man, I wish I would have known some models back then to shoot with, because I think we really could have come up with some cool stuff. So I take my little focus point here, put it on the flower. Well, that didn't work. There we go, put it on the leaves of the flower. I apologize for the crunching noise you're hearing in the background. That would be my dog deciding to get up and eat dinner at 10 o'clock at night. She is a pain. Yeah, welcome back, Spyros. I saw you left for a little bit, but glad to have you back. I mean, we have been streaming for 2 hours and 57 minutes now. Again, I'm hoping. I know Cameron, you've been to my other live streams, and I know the audio is super crappy. Trying a couple new things and a couple new mics. I used to go straight into my laptop with my audio, and my audio was garbage. And I could see why people were bailing out on my live streams because, the audio was garbage. But usually, even if the visuals are just a little bit blurry, but the audio sounds good, I wouldn't mind, I don't mind listening to a live stream. I don't mind listening to a live stream if the audio sounds good. But, if it's bad audio, audio is pretty dang important. So we just did some sharpening. Yeah, Spyros, you missed a little bit. We edited some neon photos. Had some of my other buddies come in here as well. Talked about, we just finished talking about, Lightroom collections. Just kind of messing around with anything. But since we do have a couple people in here, I guess I can drop this news. How many people do we have in the live chat? It still says Sweet Lou is in the live chat. I think Sweet Lou left quite a bit ago, unless he's just kind of having the tab open and listening. But I think Sweet Lou left. But anywho, so while we're editing, as most of you know, my primary job is I am an Air Force photographer. And I do, when I shot these flowers, this was in North Dakota where I was stationed with B-52 bombers. And I was an aerial photographer, with the Air Force. I am still enlisted in the Air Force. which is kind of makes it hard. I know Noe likes to call me out a lot, that says I don't upload as much as I should, and I completely agree. It's really difficult. I work a bare minimum of 50 hours a week, sometimes more. Don't always get weekends because, when the military says, hey, we need this done, we need this mission photographed and, documented because, some general wants it. I mean, you do it. So that is how the military works. And so that is my primary duty right now. I'm a photographer in the military, in the Air Force. Right now I'm in Colorado, and I am working at the U.S. Air Force Space Command. So we call it AF Space, or AFSPC for short. But I work at the headquarters building, directly under a 4-star general. If you guys Google General Raymond, he's quite popular in the news. And if, oh yeah, I know you love to call everybody out. That's why I don't take it personal. So, but yeah, no, I really appreciate, I consider you like an accountability partner. You call me out when I need to be called out. So I really appreciate that. And I'm working really hard to do, as you can see, I'm working hard to do these live streams. So I'm putting out a little bit more content. I'm a very boring person. As you can see, I'm not doing anything on a Friday night at 10 o'clock. So I might do more, Friday night live streams, and then, still have my weekend video, or, I was trying two a week uploads, and that really burned me out. Because like I said, I work, probably, at least 50 hours a week. And it gets hard. Not complaining at all. Love my job. Love what I do. I do photography for my job, so I can't complain. It's not always the most interesting photography, but when we do get to do the stuff that we like, it is, it's a lot of fun. But as I was saying, I work at Air Force Space Command in Colorado right now. For a 4-star general, and it's kind of hard to take, photos of space. Right now we don't have the capability of sending one of our photographers into space. We do send, NASA astronauts are actually, Air Force colonels, and Army colonels that are, space folks that are stationed with us. So, our last astronaut that just came back from the International Space Station was Colonel Nick Hague, and he is an Air Force colonel, and I'm going to be seeing him in February, doing some photo stuff with him. But, space is really, on the forefront of, all of the news. If you guys haven't been following, so Space Force has been passed by, I believe, Congress. If I'm not mistaken, Congress has approved it, and either the Senate or the House has approved it. The only thing left for Space Force to be approved is, I believe, Donald Trump, the president, has to, and it's his idea, or Donald Trump is, our president is probably the biggest proponent of Space Force. But a lot of people don't know Space Force was not Donald Trump's idea. He was just kind of one of the people to bring it to the forefront of the conversation because, everything that Trump talks about, gets talked about a lot. It doesn't matter what it is, but if he brings it up, everyone else is going to talk about it, whether, you like him or not. Realistically, he is my boss, so that's about all I can say. I don't need to get fired. But what I will say is Space Force has been, around. The idea has been around for a long time. Since the 80s, it's kind of been floating around there. We had U.S. Space Command in the 80s, and, with all the budget cuts and everything, and, kind of the hard times that this country faced in 2009 with everything crashing and NASA shutting down and the government not being able to afford anything with all our deficits and all that. We shut down U.S. Space Command, and we actually just re-stood up Space Command not too long ago. But Space Force is here. Space Force is happening. And I just found out a couple days ago, I am in the Air Force, but my unit is being shut down because of Space Force, and my unit will be turned into Space Force. So, kind of a fun little thing. I will be the first Space Force photographer, first Space Force enlisted photographer. So that's kind of neat. You guys are kind of just hearing that first now. The only other people that know that are, kind of people close to me and friends and stuff like that. But I am getting transferred into Space Force probably, beginning of next year. I'll probably do some vlogs on it because, it's kind of a big thing. It's the forefront of the news right now. But in a couple months, I will no longer be an Air Force photographer, and I will be a Space Force photographer. So that's kind of cool. I just kind of wanted to drop that in there. And since I work at the headquarters, I will, essentially I work with a team of, graphic designers. We have one other, photographer designer that's also enlisted, but he just got moved over to United States Space Command, which I won't get into these details, but that is a combatant command, different than, a military branch. So since I am still with Air Force Space Command will be getting dissolved. Likely within the next couple weeks. We're kind of releasing information on that. There's a lot more that I know, but there's only so much that I can say. We're kind of holding this information a little bit tight to the chest. But yeah, just keep watching the news, and you will see everything I'm saying is going to be coming to fruition pretty soon. I actually, I can't show it, but I designed the logo, the initial logo for Space Force the other day at work. Had the day off today, which was nice, but Thursday, it's making its way up to the Secretary of Defense. I believe our 4-star general approved it. But you will see our gold and blue Space Force logo coming out pretty soon, within the next couple days, hopefully. Keep an eye out for that. I will post it, on Twitter and probably YouTube once it gets officially released to the public. But that is all I can tell you is I have seen the official Space Force logo and design because I made it, which is kind of cool to say. So just throwing that out there too. So that's my little secret insider information that I can give you guys is the blue and gold logo that you will see in a couple days that I got to design. Kind of neat. But yeah, thank you, Spyros. Appreciate that. It is kind of neat. My head's kind of spinning right now because it's a lot of new stuff. I'll be, transferring branches from the Air Force to the Space Force, which it sounds crazy, but trust me, it makes sense. There's a lot of people like to go on, Twitter and stuff like that, or rant about politics, and they like to get mad at Donald Trump and all this other stuff. But this is one of those things. Yes, he is an advocate for Space Force, but there are a lot of very, very smart people that there's a reason Space Force is going to exist. I won't get into politics at all. I can only talk, the military side, and the entire reason, the world has GPS is because of, the United States Air Force. Every time, you turn on your GPS to, get an Uber or to find Pizza Hut or Krispy Kreme donuts, that's, you're pinging a GPS constellation of satellites, which I'm going to do a vlog on that as well. I got to go to a GPS launch in August or September, we just launched one of our new GPS satellites. We're going to be launching a new GPS 3 satellite here, I believe, in February. I'm going to be going down to, I think, Florida or California for that launch. It's sometime, coming up in late winter, early spring. We're launching the next GPS 3 updated GPS satellite that has more resistance to hacking. I guess I'm kind of turning this into a podcast now. I just kind of keep talking, but I'll edit, so we can still call this an editing video. I'll just kind of keep editing as I ramble on. If anybody's still listening, I think Spyros is still listening. I'm still getting some feedback. Play with that vibrance a little bit. But yeah, so that's like I was saying, there is a lot of very smart people that are very in control of the situation. I'll say that, that know what they're doing. And, these news outlets that thrive on, telling the entire world that everything is kind of out of control and the world is going to end tomorrow. There are some, much smarter people than the people that you see on these news networks that they really, to be honest, news networks come out and they interview, our boss all the time. And that's part of my job as well, setting up like news interviews with like CNN, CBS. Time Magazine just recently came out and did a portrait of our general, and I'm actually working on doing a portrait with him, a portrait shoot with him pretty soon. We just had Neil deGrasse Tyson come out. I did a very quick 10-second portrait shoot with Neil deGrasse Tyson, which was kind of awesome. I don't know where the file is. I have the little behind-the-scene video. I'd show you guys that right now, but I don't know exactly where it's at. I'll do a separate video on that, breaking down that whole thing. But there are a lot of, again, very collegiate level, master's degree educated, generals that know exactly what the heck they're doing, that are very much, oh, that actually looks really cool in black and white. Hold on. Let's undo that. Let's create I'm just kind of, editing off here by myself. Let's create a virtual copy. Cool. Now this virtual copy, I'm going to leave the other one where it was at. That looks kind of neat, doesn't it? Maybe I'm the only one. Now, I am not a fan of selective color at all, but this almost has like an infrared kind of look with the blue sky and the white flowers. Maybe we can do something with that. Let me try. Let's make it color. And when it comes to infrared, usually the yellows are kind of, pinkish red. Greens are usually, pretty desaturated. So let's turn our greens way down. Yeah, I'm just playing around here. None of this is wrong, none of this is right. I'm just kind of seeing what I come up with. If I can really kill these greens and, aquas. And I want to shift these reds kind of over towards, I don't know if I can go that far. Like shifting. I think shifting them red looks pretty good. There's a strange contrast now between this red and the blue that I'm not liking all that much. Maybe let's reset our saturation. It's going to look crazy at first. And instead of bringing down our green, let's see if we can shift our green another way. You know what, I might be beating this image into the ground and I don't even know it yet. I think that's kind of what I'm doing. Yeah, okay, I might just be, I think I'm just killing this image, essentially. Yeah, I don't like that. So what I'm going to do, we're in black and white. I'm going to shut off the color in this gradient filter real quick. Go down to our color, white, great. Okay, now I want to get rid of this kind of sepia tone look that I was messing around with in split toning. Get rid of that. So I don't know what you guys think. I kind of like this in black and white. It looks kind of neat. Whenever I do black and white, I always love to pump the contrast quite a bit. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Bring down our highlights a hint. Actually, going to bring down our whole exposure because the sky was getting a little bit bright. But I can also do that again with our gradient filter that we made because we selected a good majority of the sky. But yeah, that was most of my that was my little Space Force announcement. I would love to kind of brand myself, as the Space Force photographer, but as I'm sure you can guess, I have to be a little bit careful, with my job, with what I say, because it's a good job and I'm not in the mood to get myself fired. It's a pretty good gig. So I kind of have to, so right now I'm playing with my white balance because it plays with my luminance a little bit. But yeah, I don't need to get fired from my job, by saying anything dumb or, releasing information that, isn't out to the public yet. So again, I like my job for the most part. So there's, only so much that I can usually say. All right, Noe, good to have you, man. Well, I'll have a nice night. You have a nice day. Yeah, man, get out, go shoot some awesome stuff. I hope I can do a collab with you pretty soon again. Maybe an editing thing. That's probably the easiest thing to do. But yeah, let me know whenever you're back in Texas. Maybe I can make a trip down there and we can figure out something to shoot together. But yeah, have a great day. Thank you so much for coming out. And I'm sure most people in the chat already know exactly who you are because you've definitely made a name for yourself with your awesome work. So thank you again for swinging by. Yeah, so right now we're just kind of messing around with contrast with the sunflower image. I'm just kind of going with it. I think we've been, holy cow, streaming for 3 hours and 17 minutes. At this point, I might just, go to 4 hours. It is not looking, what time is it? It is 10:20 right now, my time, mountain time. Let's see. I don't think I'm going to go skiing tomorrow, or snowboarding. I was waiting for, actually speaking of that person, I was waiting for my boss to get back with me to go skiing with him, and I haven't heard anything. Ooh, that looks pretty cool. That looks neat. The sunflowers are so bright, they almost give like an infrared, kind of, I hate to misuse the word vibe, but they give an infrared feeling because they're so bright. I like the way this looks. But again, I want to be careful now that I'm only dealing with my luminance values. If I bring up, my yellows, I don't want to clip my yellows. I still want, some detail. I want to be able to see these guys in the background, and you can see it's like sunflower bokeh back here. It's pretty cool. It's like these are almost making their own little bokeh shapes, but you can see the little rings of sunflower bokeh. That's so neat, even at f5.6. And yes, Spyros, at any point in time, feel free to ask me any sort of questions. Call me out. If you want to see anything else edited, let me know. Or, talk about any other sort of photo editing, shooting kind of subjects. Just let me know. One of these days, if I get enough people, if I get like 20 or 30 people in here, it'd be great to do just like an AMA and kind of ask me anything sort of thing. Oh yeah, bringing up these oranges look really cool with the black and white. And I think I've messed with the detail about 5 times now, but I'm fairly happy with this image. I feel like if I took it any farther, I'd kind of break the image. I think this is a pretty good stopping point. The only thing is, it looks like on this left side, like it's almost flat, and then it kind of like swoops down to the right. So I might go into my transform and make sure I have this is easy to jack up. Let's see if I can fix it in lens corrections real quick. Always remove chromatic aberration. Now this may, that got me close. That got me really close. So it looks like the horizon's a little bit higher on this left-hand side. So I can go ahead and a lot of people do know this, but if you hold Control or Command, it brings up this little ruler, and I can select that part of the horizon, go all the way. I always love going a little bit farther out than I need to, and it's just, helps you line up your horizon. There we go. That looks a little bit more flat, but it looks even. So what I can do now, I can turn off the distortion. Or play with the distortion a little bit. I actually like this. It's actually making this flower a little more round. I like that. And then maybe I don't like, oh, that was close. Auto did a pretty good job. Yeah, I'm not sure if I like a completely straight horizon. Thank you, I appreciate that. Or, let's turn transform off. Lens corrections. Let's do some manual lens corrections and let's see if I can play with this distortion a bit. Whoa, too much. And that's, that's crazy. That makes it look like a super wide angle lens if you, it just kind of like sucks the background back into the center of the frame. That actually is kind of a cool effect if you just mess with it a little bit. That's way too much of a fix. Let's undo that. Undo this constrained crop that we just had on. We're gonna have to recrop this because doing all of that crazy distortion stuff ended up screwing up our image quite a bit. There we go. You know what? I really don't want to take, this is one of those ones that, I've looked at for a while and I kind of need a fresh perspective on. Whoops. But there's our before. There's our after. And by before, I mean that is our edit before we decide to make it black and white. So now this is really grabbing my attention, this horizon. So I want to go back and fix this on the other edit, which is this one. Yeah, when you compare the two, that horizon just looks absolutely ridiculous in this one. So I'm going to go through, first of all, in my crop mode, hit Command, straighten out this horizon right there. It was only off by maybe a 1.5 degrees. So enable color profile corrections. That made a huge difference right here. I need to fix my crop a little bit. Maybe bring this in a touch. Perfect. So now we have our color and then our black and white version. I think both of these kind of have their own pros and cons to which one, you know, I would decide to publish. If I would want to do black and color, I did do a video. There's the before, and there's the after again. Before any of our edits of our sunset sunflower seeds, and then afterwards, it almost looks more of a, you know, midday photo now. Maybe I'll go in and make it look a little more like sunset because, you know, it was taken at sunset. I'll play with some of these color profiles. I really love the contrast of that vivid. That looks fantastic. But I really would like to make this, I think, look more like sunset. Let's see what I can do. I'll have to go in and turn this color off. Maybe make this a little, there we go, make it a little more warm. I might have to go into the kind of a pink sky. That's way too much. Let's go orange. That looks okay. We're just kind of emphasizing what was already there. Use dehaze a touch. We're going to have to really take down our highlights. But, you know, when you look at the sun, or excuse me, when you look at sunset, it's usually, you know, very, very bright. Well, duh, very bright. But it's usually, even to your eyes, it almost looks like it's kind of like clipping. I mean, it's just, sunsets are usually just so darn bright. When they're like bright orange. Actually, that looks kind of good. I'll have to do some editing, but I'm going to make this a little skinnier and bring this mask closer to the horizon. That's starting to look like a sunset. I'm actually, I don't know about you, Spyros, but I'm liking this a little bit better than the blue sky. You know what I probably should have done is made a virtual copy of this. But we can really go hardcore, you know, sunset with this one. I do like the nearly clipped whites. I think that actually looks okay. It's going to be a matter of playing with my, you know, my white balance, because I don't want to go, you know, too crazy warm. That looks a little nuts. You know, very blue. Looks, I want to go, you know, right in between. So, you know, the horizon kind of has that haze. And I mean, let's hit enter, save that. And if I look at my before, and if I were to just brighten that up a little bit, I don't want to mess with my edit, but you can see in the raw image, you know, there's that nice haze back there. It's all out of focus, but there's that little bit of kind of orangey tint to the clouds, because this is properly white balanced. But if I go back, I really just emphasize that more than anything. I may have done it a little bit too much. Let's see. Yeah, vibrance at, Vibrance at 50 is a bit much. Let's take that down to 40. That's a little bit better. And I might even take down my saturation a touch more, because I don't want to, sunflowers and sunsets are bright, but very easy to overdo. So there's our before, there's our after. I want to bring back, again, I'm very, getting very picky here. I want to bring back those orange tones in our sunflowers. There we go. I think that's a little bit better, because sunflowers are really only bright yellow when the sun is directly hitting them. But as it gets darker in the day, they get much more orange and much more saturated and a little bit darker, and especially at sunset. So I'll bring down the luminance of these flowers just a hint. There we go. That's also affecting our sunset a little bit, so that actually looks good. Saturation is great, but I'm going to keep tweaking these. There we go. And it's just minor little tweaks. That does not look too bad. I may have... The sunset almost looks like an LA kind of pollution out in the Bay Area pollution. But nice and hazy. But I believe 2015 was when we had those really bad wildfires, wildfires out in California and Montana and Canada, and those they swept across all of North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, and it was super hazy. So if I'm not mistaken, this is actually some of the smoke and haze from those really bad summer of wildfires a while back. I remember we would do be shooting our exercises out on the runway and the flight line, and during the day everything behind our subject was just completely overexposed because everything was just like pure white haze, like shooting in fog on a sunny day. Because it wasn't fog, it wasn't blocking the sun, it was just at some sort of atmospheric level where it was blowing out our images and making them look like nuclear explosions of overexposure going on in the background. But yeah, I don't know what the heck I was doing with this photo. I don't know if I can correct the horizon without losing too much resolution. Oh, that almost looks good. Almost. Let's see. That's cool. I really like... I'm going again hardcore rule of thirds with our crop. We have this guy in the third. We have this guy in the lower third, almost on... they're kind of on the quarters. Again, I bring this up all the time. I'm a fan of the quarters. Not as much the thirds, really pushing things towards the edge. Because, you have a frame, use your frame, emphasize it. I usually like putting the bigger thing that you want to put more emphasis on a third, and then put this on a quarter. The only problem I'm running into is then these leaves get distracting, and I'm not really in a mood to Photoshop all of that out. But there we go. I think that really emphasizes this flower, makes that one smaller. But yeah, I went hardcore with that Dutch angle. That was a bit much. I don't know what I was doing. I brought this up earlier when we were talking about the neon. I may have done this, completely on purpose. I'm not 100% sure. I'm actually just going to go to my original crop, basically. And this is like at a weird, third, but centered. I don't know what I was doing. But we were talking about that earlier. When it came to my neons, I lost these photos 4 years ago and just found them on a SD card or a CF card for my Canon 5D Mark II. I took these in August of 2015, and I was super upset because I know where the very low resolution JPEGs are, but I didn't know where the RAWs were, and I thought I lost them. But this is where I was kind of teaching myself, fill flash and high-speed sync, and definitely didn't get all these correct. Just kind of playing around with sunflowers, but I was super excited to find these today, and it was just, a massive relief. I thought it was awesome to be able to find these images that I thought I lost years ago. And yeah, these are kind of neat. If I had, properly exposed them, they'd be even better. Yeah, almost 5 years. That was ridiculous. I Again, I was beating myself up over losing these photos. And was super frustrated about it, and wasn't really sure. I wasn't sure what the heck I did with them. I swore like they were on, some old hard drive, or I had to have backed them up at some point. But I've searched through all of my hard drives for these. That's how frustrated I was. Looked all over the place, and they were just nowhere to be found. And today, my live stream, I might actually save this for another time, but I still have a little, metal tin full of cards that I haven't looked at in years, that I've just, stopped using at some point. And, just haven't put them in a camera for a while. So whatever photos are left on them are, just quite literally left on them, and haven't seen them for years. So again, I still have a stack of cards, SD cards, CF cards, even a couple, probably a handful, 5 or 6 flash drives. I don't know what the heck is on them, and I've been too busy to, just simply look. So I thought it would make, a fun live stream that, you guys could see live, old photos from, who knows, 10, 15 years ago, in this case 5. But I know I have some photos from 2009, 2005 through 2009, when I just started shooting digital very heavily. At that point, kind of getting slightly more serious about photography than just playing around. I do have, quite a few photos from that time period where I'd love to, go back, and you guys can be as surprised as me when I actually, open these photos that I haven't seen for a while. And I think that might eventually make for a kind of neat live stream. But we'll see. That was my plan for today, but that kind of got shifted. I didn't plan for it very well. It's very interesting. I'm kind of just noticing, I've noticed this for a while, but kind of just saying this out loud for the first time. When you import photos into Lightroom, every camera has its different, sharpening interpretation. So when I open a Canon or a CR2 RAW file in Lightroom, the noise reduction is always at 0. Sharpening is usually right around 25 to 30. Radius is at 0. Detail is at 25. And color noise reduction is right around 25. But let me think here. When I open some of my raw Z6 files, which are NEF files, my noise reduction is at 25, color is at 25, sharpening is right around 35 to 40. The radius is always at 2 for some reason, and the detail is at like 10. So I'm not sure why that happens, but that's just kind of interesting. And then for the most part, most cameras I see, sharpening will automatically be, 25, 1.0, 25, 0, 20, and 20 usually is kind of the standard, what, looks pretty darn good at first glance. I don't know if maybe that has something to do with, the sharpening and all of that in your color profile, because raw is just raw data coming off of your camera sensor, and all of your white balance and stuff like that is just saved, and color profiles, not baked into the raw. It's only baked into the JPEG, so it's just saved into the metadata. Maybe, sharpening also has something, or noise reduction, like high ISO noise reduction options in your camera. Maybe that gets baked into the metadata for the raw file, since it's affecting only the JPEG. Just something to think about. But yeah, I think it's probably a pretty good time, I think, to wrap up this live stream. We've been going for 3 hours and 40 minutes. It'll probably take me about 5 minutes. What did I just hit? It'll probably take me about 5 minutes to get all this wrapped up. Make sure Lightroom is backed up and sign off and all that good stuff. And of course, have a couple more sips of coffee. But I am, flat out exhausted. But for everyone, I know, pretty sure Spyros is still here. I think most everybody has kind of headed out. So I think now is probably a good time to wrap up. That was a long live stream, and I really appreciate all you guys coming out. That was absolutely awesome. I didn't start feeling how long it was until about 2.5 hours in, and that was fun though. Really enjoyed editing with you guys, listening to your opinions, answering questions, stuff like that. It's always kind of difficult on my end to keep the conversation going with myself. I'm essentially talking to myself for 4 hours. But yeah, man, glad you could hang out too. That was awesome. Glad Noe and Cameron and Tyler and Jared was here, and Cloudy was here from Twitter, and we had Chad, and of course we had Lou in here, which was awesome. Oh man. But I think I am going to it's about 11 o'clock, grab a almost midnight snack, make sure everything in Lightroom is backed up here. But yeah, that was cool. I'm still super excited. I just found these photos that, like, I was trying to plan out what the heck I was going to do for my live stream. And while I was doing that and kind of going through a couple of those old cards, found this, and that was awesome. Let's see, none of my highlights are clipping in this image. Interesting. I could have swore. I'm really surprised none of those are clipping. I just want to try and experiment real quick. Okay, I guess, wow. All of that data is there in the sunset. I'm surprised. My brain is still blown away by the dynamic range of the Canon 5D Mark II. I'm selling that camera just because it's been sitting on a shelf. Since I bought my GH5. But I think the dynamic range of the 5D Mark II probably still blows the GH5 out of the water. It's just the photodynamic range of a lot of Canons is absolutely fantastic. I'm by no means sponsored by Canon. I've thrown Canon a lot of hate recently. But the dynamic range of the 5D Mark II is absolutely insane. Just being able to pull back that sunset, and I'm actually gonna keep doing that. I'll keep working on this image at some point, but feel free when this video is actually done, let me know in the comments. For everyone that isn't watching live, let me know in the comments. You probably haven't made it this far unless you're listening to this like a podcast, but let me know what other kind of live streams you'd like to do. Maybe next week, before I head out on vacation, I'll preload a couple videos. So my videos are still coming out every weekend. But what I think I might do is poll you guys, see what you want to do for live streams. And maybe we can, I think it would be great. Let me think. Yeah, I think if we get enough people, I would love to get at least an audience of, 5, 10, 12 people and be able to do like an actual live critique with enough people in here to kind of sustain, the critique and the conversation. Actually do, live critiques, break down the image, maybe do a little bit of editing. Or, live editing of your photos. We'll see. Yeah, we'll have to see. That will be something for the future. I'll probably do a poll on Twitter and YouTube, and then we'll have to, plan that out a couple weeks ahead of time. But it is 3:45 into this video. We're rolling close to 11 o'clock on my end. So again, thank you to every single person that came out. I really appreciate you guys watching this and the conversation we had. This is a lot of fun. And I think it is a great time to sign off. So if you are, not watching this live, you're watching the recorded version. Thank you guys for, making it to the end. Appreciate you. And if you don't mind hitting that subscribe button, if you like this video, make sure you hit that like button as well. I appreciate that. Let me know down below in the comments what you thought as we go, since obviously the live chat won't be available anymore. But I am going to grab another cup of coffee. Spyros, have a good night. And hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And that's it for this video. So I will see you guys next weekend. I may or may not be able to put out another video this weekend just because of work stuff that I really can't talk about. But again, until next time, get out and go shoot. Have a good night.